In the quiet hours of the night, when the world softens into silence and only the distant hum of time seems to remain, a whisper rises from the heart of Rome, beneath the vast dome of St. Peter's Basilica, where candlelight flickers against marble saints and golden mosaics. There are corridors few eyes have ever seen, vaults of ancient parchment, libraries stretching deep into shadow, and doors guarded not by locks alone, but by centuries of secrecy. They say within these hidden chambers, the Vatican holds manuscripts so old their ink seems to bleed with the dust of forgotten ages. We are told that history begins in Sumer on the fertile banks of Mesopotamia, where the first kings inscribed their laws in clay and the first cities reached toward the sky. But what if those beginnings are not beginnings at all? What if the stories we call the oldest are themselves fragments, mere echoes of civilizations buried even deeper in the sands of time? Imagine walking through a corridor beneath the Vatican Library. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of vellum and cedar chests sealed long ago. Your lantern trembles as it casts wavering shadows upon scrolls whose script no scholar has yet deciphered. On one brittle fragment, older than Sumer's first tablet, a name appears, a name of a people erased from our memory, yet preserved here in silence. Could it be that long before Mesopotamia, before Egypt raised its pyramids, there were kingdoms, luminous and vast, whose stories were folded into myth, hidden deliberately from the eyes of the world? Some whisper that the Church knows of these lost civilizations, that in the Vatican's vaults lie maps of continents long vanished, records of kings who reigned in forgotten millennia, and diagrams of stars aligned in patterns no living astronomer recalls. Perhaps there are tales of a flood not spoken of in Genesis, of empires drowned, of cities built with a mastery that mocks the limits of stone and time. And perhaps the keepers of such knowledge fear that if these truths ever surfaced, the pillars of our history would crumble. As the night deepens, picture a monk centuries ago, walking through candlelit halls, his sandaled feet brushing the marble floors. In his arms, he carries a box of papyrus rolls records seized from a ruined temple in the east. He lowers them into a chest bound with iron, knowing they will not see the light of day for centuries. Perhaps he whispers a prayer, not for salvation, but for silence, and so the knowledge sleeps, buried not in earth, but in secrecy. If history is a tapestry woven from the fragments we choose to remember, then perhaps the Vatican guards the threads we were never meant to see. Threads of civilizations so ancient, their memory would make Sumer itself look young. And so tonight, as you rest in the soft cradle of the unknown, let us drift together into that silence, into the hushed corridors of Rome, into the vaults where the oldest whispers of humankind may still sleep, into the question that lingers like a breath upon the darkness. What if the Vatican hides proof of civilizations older than Sumer? The journey begins not with answers, but with shadows. Let us follow them slowly, step by step, deeper into the labyrinth of forgotten time. To speak of the Vatican is to speak not only of a place, but of a layered world. On the surface, the Vatican appears as a walled city in the heart of Rome, an enclave of faith, ceremony, and ritual. But beneath its visible splendor lies a geography far stranger, stretching both outward across centuries of empire and inward into the hidden chambers that the public will never see. To understand how whispers of civilizations older than Sumer could be hidden here, we must first feel the ground beneath our feet, the stones of Rome, the echoes of time that flow through this city like an underground river. Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of the Tiber River as dawn slowly unfurls its pale gold light across the city. The air is heavy with the scent of wet stone and laurel leaves. Rome awakens with the distant bells of churches, each note a reminder of its long and layered past. Here, empires have risen and fallen, yet one heart has continued to beat steadily: the Vatican, a city within a city, a sanctuary of memory. The Vatican's geography is deceptively small, just over 100 acres, yet within its walls reside some of the greatest treasures of human history. Beneath the soaring dome of St. Peter's, beneath the piazza where pilgrims gather, lie levels upon levels of stone, crypts, and tunnels. Some are well known: the necropolis beneath the basilica, where ancient Roman graves lie in orderly rows, their inscriptions whispering of lives extinguished nearly 2 millennia ago. Others, however, are marked on no tourist map, guarded by shadows, keys, and silence. The Vatican Library itself is said to hold over 80,000 manuscripts, many of them older than entire nations. These texts come from every corner of the known world: Greek papyri, Arabic treatises, Mayan codices, forgotten maps, and letters carried across deserts and seas. Scholars estimate that only a fraction has ever been cataloged, and fewer still translated. Among them may lie records not of what we accept as history, but of something far stranger. Ancient travelers spoke of lands that no longer exist, of kingdoms erased by cataclysm, of dynasties whose names do not appear in our textbooks. Picture yourself walking along the library's endless shelves. The air is cool, tinged with dust and faint traces of leather bindings. Each step falls into a hush so profound it feels like a cathedral of silence. Scrolls are bound in silk, codices in cracked leather, each one a slumbering witness. Some bear scripts that even the most gifted linguists cannot read, lines of symbols more akin to constellations than words. Could these be remnants of civilizations that thrived before Sumer, civilizations erased not by accident but by intention? Geographically, the Vatican sits upon a crossroads of the world. Rome itself has absorbed the relics of countless cultures: Etruscan, Greek, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian. Obelisks carried from the Nile rise in the city squares, their hieroglyphs still sharp beneath the sun. Marble looted from distant temples forms the columns of churches. Each stone in this city is already a fragment of elsewhere, stitched together into a mosaic of empire. Is it not possible, then, that within its vaults are also stored fragments from civilizations even further back, cultures swallowed by flood, fire, or forgetting? Consider the physical layers beneath the Vatican. Archaeologists know that beneath the basilica lie Roman villas, and beneath those, pagan shrines, and beneath those, still older structures, each civilization building upon the bones of the last. If this is the geography of one small hill in Rome, then what of the geography of the world at large? What if the pattern repeats, not only in Rome but across the earth, new cities rising on the bones of forgotten ones, their stories lost unless some careful keeper preserved them? The Vatican claims to safeguard the continuity of truth, yet continuity often requires choosing which truths endure and which fade into silence. In a way, its geography is not only physical, but symbolic layers of memory stacked atop each other, the newest always pressing down upon the oldest. Within those layers, a traveler might stumble not only into Roman time, but into time, far older time, before the flood, before Mesopotamia, before Sumer scratched its first cuneiform upon clay. Let us drift farther back into the geography of myth. Across the world, nearly every ancient culture speaks of lands lost and civilizations drowned. The Greeks spoke of Atlantis, swallowed by the sea. The Mesopotamians spoke of Eridu, a city before all cities, said to be the dwelling place of the gods themselves. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time, an age before dynasties when beings of divine knowledge ruled the earth. These myths echo across cultures like fragments of the same forgotten map. If records of those times survived, who would have the power, the will, and the secrecy to guard them? Now, picture the Vatican's vaults again. Imagine a chest sealed in iron, resting in a chamber where no sunlight penetrates. Within, a scroll perhaps carried by crusaders from the East, or taken from a ruined library in Alexandria, or delivered by missionaries returning from the far edges of the world. The parchment crumbles at the touch, but the ink still holds, and in its lines strange accounts of cities that glowed with lights before fire was tamed, or of builders who shaped stone not with hammers but with sounds, vibrations, forces we no longer command. The Vatican's geography is also the geography of power. Its archives are not museums open to all, but fortresses of knowledge accessible only to a chosen few. To request access is to step into a labyrinth of permissions, seals, and guards. Even scholars who have been admitted tell of restrictions so tight that one might glimpse only a page, never the whole book. Imagine how many volumes remain unopened, how many languages remain unstudied, how many truths remain folded into the shadows of those halls. But why Rome? Why should the Vatican, of all places, be the keeper of such secrets? Perhaps the answer lies in its position at the axis of both the ancient and modern world. The church inherited not only the spiritual authority of its followers, but also the relics and records of empires long gone. As Rome conquered, it gathered; as Christianity spread, it absorbed. The Vatican became not only a spiritual center, but a repository, a chest of civilization itself. And so, the geography of this mystery is twofold: the stones of Rome, layered with the dust of millennia, and the invisible geography of memory, layered with chosen silence between the two. One question lingers like incense in the air: are we truly standing at the dawn of civilization with Sumer, or are we simply standing on the surface of something far older, something deliberately buried? The bells of St. Peter's toll softly in the distance; the river glimmers beneath the moon. Somewhere in the labyrinth of vaults and archives, an ancient manuscript sleeps, its voice sealed. For now, we are only wanderers tracing the outlines of a geography we cannot fully see, but the path leads onward, deeper into history's shadows, toward those who keep its keys. To speak of the Vatican as merely a city-state or a church is to miss the essence of what it truly is. For centuries, the Vatican has played not only the role of spiritual shepherd, but also of secret guardian. Its walls do not merely protect works of art, relics, or the papal throne; they guard knowledge, the kind of knowledge that shapes not only faith, but the very perception of history. If our tale is a theater of shadows, then the Vatican is both the stage and the central actor, cloaked in vestments of mystery. The Vatican is, in many ways, less a place than a presence. When one stands before Peter's Square and looks upon Bernini's great colonnade, it feels less like stone and more like an embrace, two vast arms reaching outward, welcoming, or perhaps enclosing. That dual nature defines the Vatican: a beacon of light for some, a fortress of silence for others. Its great dome, rising into the Roman sky, gleams with the brilliance of faith, yet beneath, corridors stretch downward into the earth, deeper and darker than the sun can reach. Within these depths, there exists an institution less spoken of than the papacy, yet just as enduring: the archivists. They are not popes, nor cardinals, nor the familiar faces of public worship. Instead, they are shadows who have dedicated their lives not to preaching, but to guarding. They move silently through the apostolic archives, gloved hands tracing spines of ancient tomes, their eyes accustomed to reading ink so faded it seems written in smoke. Few outside their order ever know their names. They are sworn not only to preserve, but to conceal, to ensure that certain truths remain locked away until, if ever, the time is deemed right for revelation. The Vatican Secret Archives, whose very name stirs imagination, are the domain of these archivists. Despite popular belief, the word secretum does not mean secret in the modern sense, but rather private. And yet, within this privacy lies the greatest secrecy of all. Here, nearly 12 centuries of documents rest, spanning popes, kingdoms, empires, and forgotten lands. The shelves stretch for miles, containing papal correspondence, ancient maps, trial transcripts of the Knights Templar, letters from Michelangelo, Galileo's pleas, and beyond. But among these known treasures, whispers speak of shelves and chambers that are not listed in any catalog, where records older than the flood are said to lie. Then are the keepers of these chambers? Some say they are Jesuits, the intellectual arm of the church, whose order has long combined faith with rigorous scholarship. Others believe there exists a smaller, hidden brotherhood: men and women whose entire lives are spent in service to the preservation of forbidden knowledge. To the outside world, they appear as librarians, scribes, or historians. But behind the locked doors, their work resembles less the work of scholars and more the work of custodians of power. Picture one such figure, a gray-robed man in his later years, his face lined with candlelight shadows. Each evening, when the city falls asleep, he unlocks a gate with a heavy iron key that glints in the lamplight. He steps into a room no one else may enter. Before him, chests of cedar and iron rest in orderly silence. Some are sealed with wax, others with rusting locks, whose teeth no craftsman remembers how to forge. He lifts one carefully, and inside lies a fragment of papyrus written in symbols that resemble no language on earth. He does not read it aloud. He does not translate. He only ensures that the parchment does not crumble, that the silence it carries remains intact. To see the Vatican as a character is to see a guardian cloaked in paradox. For centuries, it has been both the voice of the divine and the curator of silence. It speaks of truth, yet withholds truths. It proclaims origins, yet hides older beginnings. Its archivists are both scholars and wardens, their task not merely to protect knowledge from decay, but to protect humanity from the knowledge itself. For what might happen if it were revealed that civilization did not begin in Sumer, but in some forgotten age? What if humanity's history stretched back not 5,000 years, but 50,000 or more? The Vatican's very structure reflects this role above. Sunlight floods the basilica, illuminating mosaics, altars, and the open sky of faith below. Darkness thickens with every descending step until one reaches chambers where the only light is that of flickering oil lamps. In this architecture, the Vatican mirrors the human mind, the conscious world of belief above, and the subconscious depths of memory below. The archivists are like keepers of a dream, ensuring that the deeper layers do not surface uncontrolled. But perhaps the most mysterious element of this organization is not the documents themselves, but the decisions made about them. For centuries, popes and councils have decided what the faithful may hear, what the world may know, and what must remain unseen. These decisions have sculpted history itself. Consider how the canon of the Bible was chosen, some texts embraced, others rejected. What, then, might they have done with records that spoke not of divine revelation, but of civilizations lost to time? Would they not be locked away, sealed beneath Rome, so that history might remain a simpler, neater tale? There is also the matter of power. Knowledge, after all, is not neutral. To hold records of civilizations predating Sumer is to hold the power to reshape the entire story of humankind. Archaeologists, scholars, and rulers would look differently upon our place in time if such evidence surfaced. The Vatican, aware of the destabilizing force such revelations could unleash, has chosen instead to act as custodian, deciding that some truths are too heavy for the world to bear. Thus, the archivists remain in shadow, not as villains, but as guardians who believe they serve a greater order. And yet, legends persist of leaks, of hints, of glimpses into the vaults. Travelers through the centuries tell of strange manuscripts brought to the Vatican from faraway lands. Jesuit missionaries returned from China, India, and the Americas carrying not only converts, but codices, charts, and ancient oral traditions. Some of these were studied, some displayed, others vanished into the vaults, never to be seen again. Could it be that in their chests lie fragments of civilizations, unknown kingdoms, washed away long before Sumer inscribed its first laws? The Vatican as an organization then becomes almost like a living entity, a mind with memory, a voice with discretion, a heart with caution. Its archivists are the fingers that touch but do not reveal, the lips that whisper only to the chosen few. If the Vatican hides proof of civilizations older than Sumer, it does so not with malice, but with a strange mixture of fear and reverence. Fear that humanity might collapse beneath the weight of its own forgotten past. Reverence for truths so old they seem to brush against the edge of the divine. Let us imagine, then, the Vatican as a great guardian at the threshold of time. Behind it lies a corridor of civilization Sumer. Yes, but also others erased cities drowned in oceans, cultures lost to deserts, kingdoms turned to dust long before clay tablets spoke. Before us, it stands silent, its archivists holding keys to doors we cannot open. Whether those doors conceal myths or truths, we cannot yet know, but the Vatican knows. It has always known. And so the central character of our story is not a pope or a priest, but this vast and secretive guardian, the Vatican itself, embodied by its archivists, its Jesuits, its unseen custodians. It is both shepherd and sentinel, hiding behind the veil of holiness while guarding the deepest silence of history. Above, the bells ring their prayers into the open air. Below, in darkness, manuscripts sleep, waiting like seeds in the soil. The Vatican breathes between the two, its presence unbroken. its secrets intact. For now, the curtain lifts on its role not as a place of worship alone, but as the keeper of something older, deeper, stranger, the whispers of civilizations long buried, whose names may yet echo if ever the locks are undone. And from here, our path leads not just to the guardian, but to the origins of what it may be guarding. For if there are civilizations older than Sumer, their legends must still flicker, be like dying embers in the myths of humankind, long before the rivers of Mesopotamia birthed Sumer, before the Nile carved dynasties into stone, before the yellow dust of China gave rise to emperors. There were stories. These stories come not as textbooks, not as chronicles, but as whispers, myths sung in firelight, etched in symbols, or hidden in the rhythms of prayers. To some, they are only legends. To others, they are fragments of memory, clues that point to civilizations far older than what we are taught to be the beginning. Let us begin with the Greeks. In dialogues attributed to Plato, there emerges the haunting account of Atlantis, not a parable, he insisted, but a history, passed down through Solon from Egyptian priests. Atlantis, a vast island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, was said to have been rich in knowledge, power, and magnificence. Its palaces shimmered with precious metals, its people mastered the seas, yet in a single night and day of misfortune, it was swallowed by the ocean. To most, this tale is a moral allegory. But what if it is memory and echo of a real civilization, so old its ruins rest beneath waves, its wisdom scattered, its survivors blending into the peoples who came after? Cross the sea to Egypt, and you will find another legend, Zep Tepi, the first time. Egyptian priests spoke of an age when gods walked the earth, teaching mankind the arts of civilization. These gods were not ethereal beings, but rulers of flesh and presence, tall, luminous figures who brought order to chaos. Temples etched with hieroglyphs remember their reign, yet historians brush them aside as myth. But what if Zep Tepi was not myth at all? What if it was a memory of a lost epic, when a people of immense knowledge set the foundation upon which Egypt would later rise? In Mesopotamia, the oldest known city, Eridu, speaks with its own voice. Sumerian tablets describe Eridu as the dwelling place of the gods, the city established in the first days. Their king lists stretch backward into the realm of impossibility, speaking of rulers who reigned for thousands of years before the flood. Scholars dismiss these as exaggerations, symbolic of myth. Yet the tablets do not waver. They insist civilization began before the flood, before the reckoning of time we accept. Could it be that Eridu was not the first city at all, but a remnant of something older, rebuilt atop ruins we can no longer see? Far across oceans, the Polynesians sing of Hawaii, a homeland lost beyond the horizon from which their ancestors once sailed. The Aztecs tell of Aztlan, a place of 7 caves, glowing with primordial light. The Hindus whisper of Dwarka, a city of Krishna swallowed by the sea, its palaces glittering beneath the waves. And in the Pacific, there lingers the dream of Lemuria, a vast continent that once bridged the Indian Ocean, home to an advanced race, now vanished without a trace. Are these myths separate, or do they echo the same story told in different tongues, again and again across cultures? We hear of lands drowned, of people scattered, of knowledge lost in cataclysm, a flood, a fear, an upheaval of earth and skeets. The details shift like reflections on water, but the core remains. Humanity remembers a time before memory. Now imagine, within the vaults of the Vatican, a chest sealed with wax and iron, its contents known only to a few. Inside rests a fragment of a map, older than parchment itself, perhaps copied and recopied from originals long gone. The continents are not drawn as we know them. There are lands where oceans now stretch. There are coastlines that do not match the present, but align with the patterns of the Ice Age. Could such a relic exist? Could it explain why myths across the world carry the same rhythm of loss and rebirth? Some scholars believe the Vatican may hold manuscripts rescued from the Library of Alexandria before its burning, a collection said to contain histories of the world far beyond Egypt and Greece. If even a fraction survived, what knowledge might be hidden? Perhaps there are texts that speak of Atlantis as fact, not fable, of Zep Tepi as history. not legend, of Eridu as one chapter in a book written long before Sumer's first lines. Consider the biblical flood. In Genesis, it is a divine punishment. In Mesopotamian text, it is a cleansing that ended one age and began another. In countless other cultures, from the Americas to Asia, the flood appears again. Could it be that these are not separate inventions, but recollections of a single cataclysm? If so, then the civilizations before the flood may indeed have been real, swept away, leaving only myths as footprints. And if records of those civilizations exist anywhere, would not the Vatican, the guardian of lost knowledge, be the one to hold them? Let us dwell for a moment in the sensory presence of these legends. Picture standing on the shore of a vanished city, the air heavy with salt and smoke. The sea is rising, swallowing streets of stone. Families carry tablets, scrolls, tools, objects they hope will survive. If not themselves, some flee by boat, scattering across oceans, carrying fragments of their culture to foreign lands. Centuries later, their descendants will tell stories, stories that shift and bend with each retelling, until myth is all that remains, and somewhere, perhaps, a handful of records endure taken, preserved, hidden. Legends speak not only of floods, but of knowledge. The myths of old are filled with hints of technologies and wisdom that seem out of place. The Mayans and Egyptians, separated by oceans, both mastered calendars that align with the stars more precisely than modern reckoning. The stones of Pumapunku in Bolivia lie scattered, cut with angles so exact they seem machined. The Great Pyramid at Giza aligns with true north with uncanny precision. Were these coincidences or inheritances from civilizations long forgotten? If the Vatican holds proof, it would explain much why these myths converge, why ancient peoples seem to have known more than they should, why whispers of first times and golden ages echo across the world. But why keep such secrets hidden? Perhaps because knowledge reshapes belief. If humanity learns it is not 5,000 years old in its civilizations, but 50,000 or more, then our religions, our sciences, our sense of ourselves are shaken. The Vatican, as guardian, might prefer the safer story that history begins in Sumer, neat and comprehensible, and so the older threads are folded away, buried in vaults beneath Rome, where only chosen eyes may see. As we drift deeper into these ancient legends, one cannot help but sense a pattern. Each story, from Atlantis to Zep Tepi, from Eridu to Lemuria, carries the same undertone that humanity is older, grander, and more fragile than we remember, that cycles of rising and falling have happened before and may happen again, that our memory is not as long as our existence. And so, the Vatican stands, holding its silence, whether it shelters scrolls of Zep Tepi, maps of Atlantis, or tablets of Eridu, we cannot know. But if those records sleep beneath its stones, then the legends we call myths may be history waiting to be reawakened. The night deepens, and the stories stretch outward like constellations, each a star in a pattern we cannot fully see. We hear only echoes, the splash of waves over a drowned city, the chant of priests recalling a first time, the whisper of papyrus beneath gloved hands in a Roman vault. The legends are not yet finished. They lead us onward, toward the moment when myths and power entwine, and a hidden history begins to shape the present. The story of the Vatican's rise is not one of a single moment, but of centuries layered like the rings of an ancient tree. In its earliest days, it was no more than a gathering of believers, meeting in homes and catacombs, whispering prayers by torchlight. Rome in the first century was a city of power and spectacle, where emperors held dominion over land and sea. And yet, within its shadows, a new faith stirred, fragile, persecuted, but relentless. From those dim lit gatherings would emerge an institution that, in time, would wield influence greater than kings. The rise of the Vatican is, on the surface, a tale of faith prevailing against the sword. But if we look closer, if we peer into the crevices where whispers linger, we may see another layer, that of knowledge gathered, preserved, and perhaps hidden. For as the church grew, it did not merely preach the gospel, it absorbed the relics, text, and traditions of the world it encountered, and with each conquest, each conversion, each library acquired, it became not only the shepherd of souls, but the custodian of forgotten time. Let us return to the 2nd century. When Christians huddled in the catacombs beneath Rome, the air was cool and damp, heavy with the smell of earth and the faint sweetness of oil lamps. On the walls, they painted symbols of fish, a shepherd, a cross, but among these familiar signs, there are also stranger etching stars, wheels, ancient motifs that resemble far older traditions. Did these early followers borrow from older wisdom, or were they already inheritors of fragments passed down from civilizations long gone? As Christianity spread across the empire, it encountered the knowledge of Greece, of Egypt, of Mesopotamia. The church fathers debated not only scripture, but also philosophy, astronomy, and history. To embrace the faithful, they often absorbed the traditions of older cults, baptizing pagan festivals into Christian feasts, transmuting temples into basilicas. In doing so, they did not only conquer, they inherited, and what they inherited was not just ritual, but memory of older gods, older myths, and perhaps even older histories. Then came the 4th century. Emperor Constantine, crowned in power, embraced Christianity. With his patronage, the once persecuted faith rose into legitimacy. He built churches upon the ruins of pagan shrines, most notably the Grand Basilica atop the Vatican Hill. Beneath its foundation, graves of Romans slumbered, and perhaps even older stones. By merging imperial authority with spiritual vision, Constantine planted the seed of what would become a throne not only of faith, but of temporal might. With imperial backing came access to libraries, to temples, to the relics of conquered lands. Consider the Library of Alexandria, whose loss haunts the imagination. Historians argue about when and how it burned, but whispers suggest that fragments of its collection survived, carried away in the chaos. Some of those scrolls, it is said, found their way to Rome. If so, then among them may have been histories of civilizations erased, accounts of lands drowned, records of technologies we no longer understand. If the Vatican absorbed these relics, it may have quietly preserved them, folded into its growing archives. Through the Middle Ages, as empires fractured and Europe descended into waves of war and famine, the Vatican stood as one of the few centers of continuity. Monks in candlelit scriptoria copied texts by hand, their quills scratching across vellum. Not only scripture, but also Greek philosophy, Roman history, and Arabic science. Yet we must wonder, did they also copy stranger works, texts whose origins were too obscure, too dangerous to spread widely? A monk might labor by torchlight over a manuscript describing a city lost to the sea, or a ruler whose reign stretched into impossible centuries. Such a work would not be shared with the world. It would be hidden, placed in a vault, sealed until a future time, or perhaps never again to see the light. By the time of the Renaissance, the Vatican had become a power in its own right, its influence extending beyond the spiritual into politics, art, and science. Popes crowned emperors, raised armies, commanded architects to build structures that defied time. Yet even as its splendor grew, its silence deepened. The Renaissance was an age of rediscovery. When ancient texts reemerged, when Europe remembered Plato and Aristotle, when new worlds were charted across the seas, and still, the Vatican kept its vaults closed. If ever there were a moment to reveal the older histories it might possess, it did not come. Instead, the guardians chose to keep certain scrolls sealed, certain truths folded. Consider how the Vatican responded to challenges of knowledge. When Galileo turned his telescope toward the heavens and spoke of worlds circling worlds, the church silenced him. It was not merely a battle of science and faith, it was a reminder that knowledge is power, and power must be controlled. If the orbit of planets was deemed dangerous, how much more dangerous would be the revelation of civilizations predating Sumer? It would not only challenge belief, but unravel the story of humanity itself. Through conquest and exploration, the church gathered treasures from across the globe. Jesuit missionaries returned from China with ancient maps, from India with scrolls, from the Americas with codices. Many were studied, admired, and displayed. Others vanished quietly into the archives. Was it only coincidence, or were some records deemed too disruptive, too revealing of an age before ages, an origin before the origins we are allowed to see? The Vatican's rise then was not merely the story of a faith triumphing over adversity, it was the story of an institution that positioned itself at the axis of memory. It became the guardian of humanity's spiritual soul, yes, but also of its forgotten past. Kings and emperors came and went, but the Vatican endured. In its endurance, it became a vault not only of relics and bones, but of truths. One must imagine the Vatican not as passive in this role, but deliberate. The archivists and popes of centuries past must have faced decisions to reveal or conceal, to share or to lock away. And each time they chose silence, for silence is safer. Silence maintains order. Silence prevents the tremor of revelation from shattering the foundations of faith and empire alike. As the Vatican's influence spread, so too did its responsibility. If indeed it possessed fragments of older civilizations' maps, texts, tablets, or strange relics, then it stood as the sole guardian of those voices. For centuries, no one questioned. To be Catholic was to accept Rome's authority. To be European was to feel the Vatican's shadow. To be a seeker of knowledge was to know that some doors would never open. And yet, power breeds intrigue. Whispers circulated through courts and kingdoms that the Vatican held treasures beyond imagining, that beneath its stones slept histories that could rewrite the world. Some believed, some scoffed, but the whispers never died. They persist even now, carried like incense in the air, impossible to dispel. The Vatican's rise to power was thus not only the ascent of a faith, but the enthronement of a guardian. It became the keeper of keys, not just to heaven, but to the buried ages of earth. Its wealth and armies gave it might, its faith gave it authority, but its silence, its vast, deliberate silence, gave it dominion over memory itself. And so, when we ask what if the Vatican hides proof of civilizations older than Sumer, we are not asking of a weak or careless custodian. We are asking of a guardian that has risen, endured, and wielded power across nearly 2,000 years, a guardian that chooses silence with the same certainty that others choose revelation, a guardian that sees history not as open record, but as a tapestry, carefully woven with certain threads kept forever hidden. Above Rome, the bells ring, calling the faithful to prayer. Below, in vaults sealed with iron, the silence deepens. The Vatican has risen, not only as church and state, but a shadow, a keeper of truths so old they might unmake the story of civilization itself. Our journey now moves onward, for every rise carries within it a golden zenith. If the Vatican's power grew like a tide, then surely it reached a shining crest. In that golden age, perhaps its vault swelled with treasures gathered from every corner of the earth, each artifact another fragment of a past older than we know. The Vatican's golden age was a time when light and shadow grew together, twined like the threads of a single tapestry. To the world, it appeared in radiant splendor, its basilicas crowned with domes of unmatched beauty, its chapels alive with frescoes, its piazzas teeming with pilgrims from distant lands. But beneath the marble and gold, deeper in its labyrinth of archives and vaults, shadows lengthened, for as the Vatican reached the height of its glory, so too did its role as guardian of secrets deepen. Imagine Rome in the 16th century, the heart of the Renaissance. The air thrummed with music, philosophy, and invention. Artists like Michelangelo and Raphael brushed eternity onto plaster, their pigments glowing beneath candlelight. Scholars and scientists reawakened the wisdom of Greece and Rome, translating lost texts, probing the heavens, measuring the earth. And at the center of it all, the Vatican stood both patron and arbiter, guiding this flood of knowledge, but also deciding which currents would be allowed to flow freely and which would be dammed in silence. St. Peter's Basilica rose like a mountain of stone and faith, its dome a crown upon the city. Pilgrims gazed upward in awe, seeing in it the triumph of Christianity. Yet beneath that dome, in the archives and corridors unseen, there were manuscripts older than the basilica's stones, perhaps older even than the city itself. While the Renaissance celebrated rediscovery, the Vatican celebrated containment, taking in relics from newly explored lands, placing them in chests, and locking them away. This was an age of exploration, when caravels sailed beyond horizons and returned with wonders from the Americas, Africa, and Asia. Jesuit missionaries sent back codices painted in brilliant colors, maps drawn by hands unfamiliar to Europe, panels of gods and empires long lost. Spanish conquistadors brought relics seized from temples of the Aztecs and Incas, relics of civilizations whose origins stretched far deeper than their sudden fall. Some treasures were displayed, others sent to scholars, but some, we must imagine, vanished into the vaults of Rome, too strange or too threatening to fit within the narrative of Christian history. Consider the Mayan codices written in glyphs that recorded cycles of time stretching back thousands of years. To the missionaries who first saw them, they were bewildering, even dangerous, for they spoke of worlds older than the Christian reckoning. Many were burned in great pyres, yet a few survived. Where did those few go? Scholars know of three codices today, but whispers suggest others may have been carried to Rome, preserved not for study, but for silence. Within those pages may lie accounts of ages far older than Sumer, reckoned not in centuries but in epochs. It was also in this golden age that the Vatican refined its dual role, patron of knowledge and warden of secrecy. Galileo's telescope revealed moons orbiting Jupiter, a cosmos larger than the ancient texts had described. For this, he was silenced, not because the church feared truth itself, but because truth, if uncontrolled, threatened the order of the world. Imagine then how much more fiercely it would guard truths that placed civilization itself before the accepted dawn. The Golden Age was not only artistic and intellectual, it was deeply architectural. The Vatican expanded its libraries, filling miles of shelves with parchment and vellum. The Sistine Chapel ceiling was painted above, but below, beneath marble floors, scribes and archivists tended to texts wrapped in silk, their ink fading with centuries. Pilgrims came to see saints depicted in color and stone, but no pilgrim would see the documents that spoke of lost continents or forgotten empires. The Vatican's glory shone above, while its shadows deepened below. Let us drift into a sensory moment. Picture yourself in the Vatican Library at this time. Tall windows cast shafts of light across polished floors. Scholars murmur over manuscripts, quills scratch, pages whisper as they turn. Yet beyond the public rooms, behind doors of oak and iron, another silence reigns. A guard with a heavy key unlocks a chamber. Inside, the air is cooler, tinged with cedar and dust. Chests line the walls, their lids sealed with wax. The scholar is not permitted here. Only the archivist may enter, carrying a lantern that casts long, trembling shadows. He opens a chest, and there lies a fragment of a map drawn not in the Renaissance, not in Rome, but in an age when glaciers still gripped the earth. The coastlines are wrong, the seas misplaced, yet eerily familiar to modern eyes who have studied ice age geography. The archivist studies it silently, then seals it once more. The map is not for the world, it is for the vaults. Why would such treasures be hidden? The answer lies in the paradox of the Vatican's golden age. The Renaissance was a time of flowering, but also of fragility. Ideas spread like fire. A single book could spark reformation, revolution, upheaval. The Vatican, already shaken by Martin Luther and the fracturing of Christendom, understood that certain revelations could unmake not just theology, but civilization's entire foundation. If the world believed its roots reached not to Sumer or Eden, but to civilizations drowned by oceans or lost to fire, then the authority of scripture, empire, and order would tremble. So the Vatican chose silence. Its glory was external, its secrecy internal. The Jesuits, rising in prominence during this age, became both missionaries and scholars, journeying to the ends of the known world. In China, they studied ancient texts. In India, they encountered philosophies older than Rome. In the Americas, they learned of gods and calendars that spoke of cycles of creation and destruction. Many of their reports became public, but some, perhaps, were carried only to Rome, placed not in the hands of scholars, but in the archives, where they would be folded into silence. The Vatican's golden age was built not only on art and faith, but on the quiet accumulation of memory. Above, Michelangelo painted prophets and sibyls upon the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, their forms vast and luminous. Below, archivists tended to parchments that spoke of prophets long forgotten, sibyls from civilizations erased. The contrast is striking: the glory of visible beauty and the gravity of hidden knowledge. As the centuries passed, the Vatican's wealth and influence reached a crest. Kings bowed, artists obeyed, scholars deferred, pilgrims wept in the glow of its cathedrals, seeing in them the majesty of heaven. Yet none knew that beneath those very stones, perhaps, lay evidence of ages older than Sumer, hidden in silence. The Golden Age, like all ages, carried its own fragility, for in reaching its height, the Vatican also sowed the seeds of suspicion. Whispers grew louder that Rome held not only relics of saints, but secrets of the ancients, that its vaults contained knowledge forbidden not by God, but by men, that within its silence, the story of humanity was larger, stranger, and older than anyone could imagine. And so, the Vatican in its golden age stood at the intersection of two worlds. To the faithful, it was a beacon of light, guiding souls heavenward. To the few who suspected, it was a fortress of silence, guarding truths that could unravel history. Both were true, both remained true. The golden age was not merely a time of glory, but of secrecy refined to perfection. As we leave this crest of radiance, our path turns downward into shadow. For every golden age carries within it conflicts, intrigues, and the stirrings of unrest. The Vatican could not shine without also casting shadows. And within those shadows, others began to seek what was hidden, to pry at locks, to question silences. The bells toll softly across Rome. Pilgrims kneel in awe beneath the Sistine ceiling. Archivists lock away their chests beneath the stones. The golden age glows, and yet, in its glow, the first flickers of conflict are born. Where there is power, there are always those who covet it. Where there are secrets, there are always those who seek to break them open. The Vatican, in its golden age, seemed untouchable, its dome gleaming over Rome, its reach extending across continents, and yet no structure of such vast influence can stand without drawing adversaries. Beneath its gilded splendor, a storm brewed. The first great tremor came with the Reformation. In the 16th century, Martin Luther's hammer struck against the door of Wittenberg, and the ripples spread across Europe like cracks in ancient stone. His words challenged indulgences, corruption, authority, but beneath these grievances lay a deeper rebellion, a challenge to control. For centuries, the Vatican had been the keeper not only of spiritual authority, but of memory, deciding which truths were to be revealed and which hidden. Luther and his followers sought to tear down that monopoly. The Bible, once guarded in Latin, was translated into tongues of the people. Knowledge, once cloistered, began to flow more freely. Yet with this newfound freedom came danger. What if the same defiance turned not only toward Scripture, but toward history itself? If people began to question not just indulgences, but origins, to ask whether civilization's true beginnings lay not in Sumer, but in an age deliberately forgotten. For the Vatican, such questions could not be permitted to take root. It was one thing to lose authority over liturgy. It was another to lose authority over time itself. Wars followed: the wars of religion, the 30 Years' War, the bitter divisions between Catholic and Protestant. Europe bled, its soil darkened by conflict. And amid this turmoil, whispers persisted that the Vatican held treasures no one else could see, that while armies clashed in fields and cities burned, Rome's archivists guarded relics that might reshape the very story for which men killed each other. Some imagined these relics as weapons, others as forbidden truths. Both would have given reason enough to seek them. Then came the secret societies. The Knights Templar, centuries earlier, had already brushed against the Vatican's mysteries. They had traveled to the Holy Land, dug beneath Jerusalem, and returned with treasures whose nature remains debated. Some say they found relics of Christ, others texts of far older wisdom, perhaps even accounts of civilizations erased before history. When the Templars grew powerful, the Vatican, in league with kings, moved against them. Their order was crushed, their leaders burned, their wealth seized. Yet even in their destruction, whispers persisted that part of their knowledge had survived, hidden away, passed down in silence, waiting. In later centuries, new societies arose: the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati. Each cloaked itself in symbols, rituals, and claims of hidden knowledge. Some of their myths spoke of ancient builders, of wisdom older than the pyramids, of secrets the church had long suppressed. Were these fantasies or reflections of something real, fragments of truths glimpsed, then obscured? Many of these groups saw themselves in opposition to the Vatican, which they regarded not only as a spiritual power, but as the jailer of humanity's forgotten past. The intrigues were not only external. Within the church itself, factions clashed, cardinals maneuvered like kings, orders like the Dominicans and Jesuits struggled for influence, popes rose and fell in clouds of both incense and scandal. Some sought openness, others secrecy. A pope sympathetic to inquiry might allow scholars access to fragments of the archives. Another, fearful of revelation, might lock them away again. The archives thus became not only a treasury of knowledge, but a battlefield of wills. Imagine, for a moment, a papal conclave in the dim lit halls of the Sistine Chapel, cardinals robed in crimson whisper behind fans, their voices blending like rustling leaves. Beyond the question of who shall sit on the papal throne lies another unspoken question: what shall be revealed? And what concealed in such moments? History itself trembles. For one pope may decide to unseal a chest and share its contents, another may bury it deeper. The story of humanity swings upon decisions made in silence, behind locked doors. The conflicts extended beyond Europe. As explorers charted new worlds, they encountered civilizations whose origins puzzled them. The ruins of the Americas, Teotihuacan, Tikal, Machu Picchu spoke of grandeur that rivaled Egypt. The Vatican received reports, codices, artifacts, yet these were not always shared with the world. Some were displayed as curiosities, others locked away. A conquistador might boast of his spoils, yet a Jesuit returning to Rome might surrender objects whose significance he barely understood. And behind closed doors, archivists decided safe for study, or too dangerous, too disruptive. Thus, much was hidden. Intrigues also touched upon science. In the 17th century, as telescopes peered into the heavens and microscopes into the unseen, the boundaries of knowledge widened. Yet the Vatican stood guard, sometimes resisting, sometimes absorbing. To the public, it clashed with scientists like Galileo. In the shadows, perhaps it concealed discoveries more unsettling than planetary orbits, texts that suggested humanity had not always been as it is, that other ages, other peoples, had walked the earth long before Sumer's clay tablets were pressed. One must also consider the constant threat of theft. Kings, emperors, and invaders all coveted the Vatican's archives. Napoleon, during his campaigns, seized documents and treasures from Rome, carting them off to Paris. Some were later returned, others vanished. What did his soldiers see in those vaults? What did they take? And what was lost forever? There are rumors, always rumors, that among the seized manuscripts were maps of lands long drowned, records of dynasties not listed in any known history. Perhaps they were destroyed in the chaos. Perhaps they still lie, even now, in hidden corners of Europe, unseen. But conflict did not only threaten from without, it lived within. Not all who served the Vatican agreed with silence. Some archivists, some scholars, believed truth should not be buried. They left hints, veiled notes, cryptic references in their writings, a phrase in a letter, a symbol in a margin, little cracks in the wall of secrecy. Over centuries, these cracks widened, feeding speculation. They did not reveal the hidden civilizations outright, but they left enough for curious minds to wonder. Thus, intrigue enveloped the Vatican like incense smoke, thick, pervasive, impossible to escape. To the faithful, it remained a holy city. To rulers, it was a power to be courted or resisted. To secret societies, it was both rival and keyholder. And to scholars, it was an enigma, a treasure house they could glimpse, but never fully enter. Let us imagine again the vaults. A candle flickers. Shadows dance across iron locks. Within a chest lies a manuscript written in symbols no modern language can decipher. Its script flows like rivers, its diagrams like constellations. It tells of a city by the sea, a city destroyed in fire and flood, its knowledge scattered. An archivist closes the chest. Outside, armies march, kings squabble, heretics are burned, reformers defy. But within, silence holds, for the Vatican understands battles are fought on fields and in chapels, but the greatest battle is over memory. And so, amid wars, schisms, and intrigues, the Vatican endures. It loses power in some realms, gains it in others, yet always, at its heart, it guards its silence, for to reveal what it may hold proof of civilizations older than Sumer would be to ignite a fire no army could extinguish. The bells of Rome toll softly over a city divided. Secret societies whisper in darkened lodges. Kings plot, scholars plead, archivists lock their chests. The Vatican, radiant and shadowed, stands unmoved. Its secrets remain intact. But history is restless. Conflict and intrigue are but preludes to turning point. And so, as the world presses closer, as wars grow louder, the stage darkens. Somewhere ahead lies a moment when the silence will tremble, when a major event will test whether secrecy can hold forever. History is not a calm river, but a restless sea. Even the strongest fortresses are battered by storms, and the Vatican, for all its marble splendor and iron locks, has faced moments when its secrets trembled on the edge of revelation. These turning points, scattered across centuries, tested the endurance of its silence. Some ended with the vault sealed more tightly than ever. Others left traces, fragments, hints that continue to haunt the imagination. The first great rupture came in 1527 during the sack of Rome. The Renaissance glow had not yet dimmed, but Europe was already aflame with wars and reformations. The armies of Charles V descended upon the Eternal City, and in their fury, they unleashed chaos unlike anything Rome had seen since the fall of the Caesars. Soldiers stormed churches, monasteries, and palaces. Streets ran red, and the Vatican itself was besieged. Imagine the fear in those days. Smoke hung over the city, the air heavy with ash and screams. Pilgrims fled, cardinals scattered. In the apostolic palace, archivists and monks scrambled to protect what they could. Manuscripts were bundled into crates, chests were dragged into hidden tunnels, parchments were concealed beneath altars. But the soldiers were relentless. They ransacked libraries, pried open doors, smashed reliquaries. Some say they carried away not only gold and jewels, but also manuscripts, strange manuscripts, written in tongues none could read. What became of those stolen fragments? Some may have been lost in the chaos, burned for the value of their bindings. Others may have been carried quietly into Europe's shadows, passed from hand to hand, fueling secret societies and whispered legends. A few may still linger in private collections, their true significance unrecognized. For the Vatican, the sack of Rome was more than a humiliation. It was a wound, a reminder that its vaults were not invincible. In its aftermath, it tightened its defenses. Access grew stricter, locks heavier, secrecy deeper. Centuries later, another storm rose, this time from France. Napoleon Bonaparte, conqueror of Europe, set his eyes upon Rome. In 1798, his troops entered the city, declaring the Papal States dissolved. The Pope was taken prisoner, treasures seized, and archives plundered. Wagon loads of manuscripts and documents were hauled to Paris, where scholars pored over them. Here, perhaps, lay the greatest risk of revelation, for if hidden within those manuscripts were records of civilizations predating Sumer, they might have been glimpsed by eyes unprepared for their weight. But fate intervened. When Napoleon fell, many of the seized documents were returned to Rome, yet not all. Some disappeared amid the turmoil. To this day, there are rumors that certain French families hold manuscripts unlike any others, papers describing lands not on modern maps, dynasties absent from conventional history. If so, their origin may lie in the wagons that rolled out of Rome under Napoleon's banner. The 19th century brought yet another test. As archaeology blossomed, the sands of Egypt and Mesopotamia gave up their secrets. The Rosetta Stone unlocked hieroglyphs. Cuneiform tablets spoke again after millennia. Scholars pieced together the dawn of civilization, pointing to Sumer as the beginning. Yet what if the Vatican already knew otherwise? What if, deep in its vaults, there were records older than the tablets of Uruk, manuscripts that told of peoples before the flood? The rise of archaeology must have unsettled the guardians of the archives, for as the world discovered more, the danger grew that the silence might be broken. Then came the 20th century, an age of fire. Two world wars engulfed Europe, and Rome stood once more in peril. During the Second World War, Nazi forces advanced into Italy. Though the Vatican was technically neutral, its treasures were at risk. German officers prowled Rome, seizing art, gold, and records. There are stories, unconfirmed but persistent, that some sought access to the Vatican's deeper vaults. Hitler himself was fascinated by the occult and ancient civilizations. His regime scoured Europe for relics of lost power. Could emissaries have attempted to glimpse what lay beneath Rome? Some believe they did, though the vaults remained sealed. Yet again, the Vatican's silence endured, though not without scars. But turning points are not only wars, they are also revelations, small cracks in the wall of secrecy. In the late 20th century, the Vatican opened portions of its archives to scholars. Historians sifted through letters, decrees, papal records, yet the deepest chambers remained closed, accessible only by special permission. Why, scholars asked, if the archives are only history, do such restrictions endure? What knowledge could be so dangerous? Still, the Vatican's defenders answered, to preserve fragile manuscripts, to control access. But others whispered, perhaps it is to keep hidden what could unmake the story of civilization. There is also the turning point of technology. In the modern age, satellites scan the Earth, radar peers into pyramids, DNA traces human migrations back tens of thousands of years. Discoveries emerge that complicate the neat narrative of history. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 12,000 years ago, predates Sumer by millennia. Its carved stones suggest a sophistication that should not have existed in hunter gatherer times. Each such discovery raises a question: is this the beginning of civilization, or merely a fragment of something far older, something mostly lost? And if such sites are found in the earth, what then might be found in the Vatican's vaults? Turning points are moments when silence nearly breaks. Imagine, during the chaos of war or revolution, a chest nearly pried open, a manuscript nearly revealed. An archivist, faced with soldiers demanding entry, whispers a prayer and hides the key. A crate falls into enemy hands, and within it lies a scroll no one can translate. A general glances at it, dismisses it, and it vanishes into obscurity, a near revelation that slips back into darkness. The Vatican, for all its secrecy, is not invulnerable. Each upheaval is a reminder that silence can tremble, that locks can break, and yet, time and again, it has survived. Its archives remain, its secrets endure. Wars rage, empires collapse, kings rise and fall. But in Rome, beneath marble and gold, the silence holds. And yet each turning point leaves a residue, a lingering possibility. Somewhere, in Paris, in Berlin, in dusty attics and forgotten libraries, there may still lie fragments seized in these storms, manuscripts describing a flood before the flood, maps of coastlines now underwater, accounts of rulers whose reigns stretch back into impossible centuries. If ever they emerge, Antaki, they may prove the whispers true, that the Vatican guards knowledge of civilizations older than Sumer, but that fragments have already slipped into the world, waiting to be recognized. And so the Vatican stands today not only as survivor, but as sentinel. Its greatest turning points have been tests of silence, and each time it has chosen to seal the locks tighter. But history itself grows restless. The discoveries of archaeology, the reach of technology, the curiosity of scholars all press closer to the vaults. The next turning point may not be war or conquest, but revelation, when the fragments already in the world align with the whispers beneath Rome, and the silence can no longer hold. The bells of Rome toll in twilight. The city glows with golden light upon ancient stones. Beneath, in the vaults, archivists pass by shelves where secrets rest as they have for centuries. Yet above, the world changes. Discoveries mount, questions deepen. The silence endures, but for how long? From here, our path leads to the strange and subtle clues, the hints scattered across myth, archaeology, and texts that suggest civilizations before Sumer were real and that their memory has been deliberately veiled. History often presents itself as orderly, a neat procession of eras: Paleolithic, Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and so on, culminating in Sumer as the world's first civilization. Yet outside the boundaries of this tidy chronology, scattered like glimmers in the dark, there are anomalies, objects, text, and traditions that do not fit where they are found, like fragments of an older puzzle buried beneath the layers of time. Most are dismissed, explained away, or locked into silence, but for those who listen carefully, these clues whisper of something more, perhaps of civilizations older than Sumer. Consider first the maps. In 1513, the Ottoman admiral Piri Reis compiled a world map unlike any other. On its parchment surface are drawn the coasts of South America, Africa, and, most strangely, Antarctica, depicted centuries before it was officially discovered. Even more puzzling, Antarctica is shown without its ice, its coastline bare as it would have appeared tens of thousands of years ago, before glaciers swallowed it. How could a 16th century cartographer have drawn such a thing? Scholars suggest he drew upon older sources, now lost. But where did those sources come from? Perhaps from civilizations long erased, whose seafarers charted the world in ages before recorded time. And then there is the Vinland map, a medieval parchment depicting North America centuries before Columbus set sail. Its authenticity is debated, but its existence raises questions. Who saw these lands before the age of discovery? Could there have been navigators from an older world, long forgotten, who charted oceans that later cultures only rediscovered? If so, their records may have survived, passing through ancient hands until they were collected, perhaps, in the Vatican's vast archives. Another clue lies in stone. Across the world, megalithic structures rise with a precision that defies explanation. Stonehenge in England, the great trilithons of Baalbek in Lebanon, the terraces of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, their stones weigh hundreds of tons, fitted with uncanny accuracy, often aligned to celestial events. How could societies we call primitive have carved, moved, and aligned such stones without advanced knowledge? Mainstream scholars offer theories: sledges, ropes, manpower, yet the perfection of the cuts, the sheer scale, and the astronomical alignments suggest something more. Could these sites be the remnants of civilizations older than Sumer, whose knowledge of stone and the star far surpassed what we imagine? Artifacts, too, offer peculiar hints. In South America, the Fuente Magna bowl was unearthed near Lake Titicaca. Its inscriptions resemble Sumerian cuneiform and Proto-Sumerian script, thousands of miles and millennia away from Mesopotamia. Scholars argue over its authenticity, but if genuine, it suggests contact between cultures long before our textbooks allow, or the survival of an older, global civilization. Another enigma is the Baghdad Battery, a clay jar with traces of copper and iron, believed by some to be an ancient galvanic cell found in Mesopotamia. It predates known electrical experimentation by 2 millennia. Was it merely coincidence, or a fragment of a technology inherited from a forgotten age? There are also the Upart's out-of-place artifacts, a hammer found encased in rock dated to hundreds of millions of years, a sphere from South Africa with grooves etched with uncanny precision, formed in geological layers older than humanity itself, a mechanical device discovered in a shipwreck near Antikythera, Greece, which functions as an advanced astronomical calculator built in the 2nd century BCE, but so sophisticated it seems to belong to another era entirely. Each artifact alone can be dismissed, explained, debated, but together they weave a pattern of disruption. Beyond objects, there are texts. The Sumerian king list records rulers whose reigns spanned thousands of years before the flood. Mainstream historians call these exaggerations. Yet why exaggerate so precisely, so consistently? Could the list preserve a memory of a time when human life was measured differently, when civilization stretched across epochs, lost to cataclysm? The Popol Vuh of the Maya speaks of worlds created and destroyed in cycles, of gods who fashioned humanity not once, but several times. After earlier creations failed, the Hindu scriptures speak of vast yugas, cosmic ages spanning tens of thousands of years, in which civilizations rise and fall. Are these myths or fragmented memories of real cycles of civilization predating Sumer? The Vatican, we may imagine, possesses copies of these texts, perhaps even originals. Imagine a scroll brought from Mesopotamia, sealed in wax, its cuneiform lines describing not the dawn of Sumer, but echoes of cities even older, or a codex carried from the Americas, its pages painted with glyphs recording cycles of destruction that stretch into prehistory. To the outside world, these are myths, but in the Vatican's vaults, they may exist not as speculation, but as preserved memory. Another category of strange clues lies not in objects or texts, but in architecture's echoes across the world. The pyramids of Egypt, the step pyramids of Mesoamerica, the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, all similar in form, yet scattered across continents. Mainstream history explains this as coincidence, humans everywhere stacking stones upward. Yet one must wonder why the same form, so strikingly across oceans and cultures. Could it be an inheritance from a shared origin? A civilization so old that its influence spread globally, then vanished, leaving only echoes. If the Vatican holds records of such a civilization, it would explain much and reveal why the myth of Atlantis, of Zep Tepi, of Lemuria persists across tongues. The strangest clues, however, are not material at all. They are in the alignments of stars and time. Ancient sites across the globe align with solstices, equinoxes, and celestial events in ways that suggest deep astronomical knowledge. The Great Pyramid aligns with true north to a fraction of a degree. The Nazca lines stretch across Peru in vast designs visible only from the sky, their purpose still mysterious. Angkor Wat in Cambodia aligns with the constellation Draco as it appeared 12,000 years ago. Why would cultures we deem young build monuments aligned to skies of ages past, unless perhaps they inherited knowledge from older civilizations that had already studied the heavens? One cannot help but picture an archivist in the Vatican leafing through a fragile manuscript copied from some lost library, perhaps Alexandria, perhaps Antioch, perhaps carried on crusader ships from the east. The manuscript describes a city lit by strange lights, its people charting the stars with lenses, its builders raising stones with forces now forgotten. The archivist does not laugh, he does not disbelieve. He quietly folds the parchment, ties it with cord, places it back in its cedar chest. For this, too, is a strange clue, a piece of a puzzle that, if revealed, could unravel everything we think we know of history. And still, the strangest clue of all may be the silence itself. For centuries, the Vatican has collected, absorbed, and preserved. It has inherited artifacts, codices, manuscripts from every corner of the world, yet the deepest parts of its archives remain closed. Why, if there were nothing strange within? Why the secrecy? Why the denial of access, even to the most credentialed scholars? Silence itself is a clue, perhaps the most powerful of all. Imagine standing in the cool darkness of the apostolic archives around you. Shelves stretch into the shadows, filled with manuscripts no human outside the Vatican has seen in centuries. You reach out, touch a scroll. Its surface is brittle, its ink faint, but the symbols are alien, ancient. They do not match Latin, Greek, Hebrew, or Sumerian. They belong to something older, a tongue of a forgotten people. In that moment, you realize the clues have always been here, scattered across myth, artifact, stone, and star. The Vatican has simply gathered them, folded them away, waiting. The world outside continues in its tidy chronology, Sumer first, Egypt next, Greece after, but beneath Rome, in the silence of the vaults, the strange clues accumulate, and taken together, they whisper there was something before. The bells of the city toll. Night settles over the Tiber, the river glinting in moonlight. In the shadows of the Vatican, archivists close their chests, extinguish their lamps. The clues return to sleep. But they are not gone. They linger, waiting for eyes that can see the pattern. And so, from scattered anomalies, we move toward the larger mystery, how civilizations, real or imagined, can fall into silence. vanishing so completely that only fragments remain. For the next stage of our journey is not the rise of forgotten empires, but their disappearance. Every civilization carries within it the seeds of its own disappearance, just as the sun must eventually set. So too do empires fade, crumble, and vanish into memory. Yet when we consider the possibility of civilizations older than Sumer vast, luminous societies that might once have thrived, their disappearance is not only a question of decline, but of erasure so complete that even their names are gone. We are left only with fragments, myths, and whispers. To imagine their fall is to imagine silence descending upon entire worlds. The most common echo of their end is water. Nearly every culture on Earth speaks of a great flood, a deluge that swept away cities, drowned kingdoms, and left only survivors scattered upon the earth. The Sumerians told of Utnapishtim, who built an ark and endured the waters. The Bible tells of Noah, guided by divine command. The Aztecs speak of a flood that ended one age of man. The Hindus tell of Manu, saved by a great fish from the rising sea, from the Pacific Islands to the highlands of Tibet, from the valleys of Mesopotamia to the Andes of South America. The memory repeats. It is as if, in the deep marrow of humanity, there lingers a scar of drowning. Could this flood have been real? Geological evidence suggests that at the end of the last ice age, some 12,000 years ago, glaciers melted with ferocity. Sea levels rose hundreds of feet, swallowing coastlines, drowning valleys, erasing entire landscapes. If civilizations streaked along those coasts, their cities would now lie beneath the waves. Think of the continental shelves, those submerged lands that once were plains, rivers, and forests. Upon them, perhaps, stood settlements, temples, even cities of stone, now hidden beneath oceans. If their memory survived at all, it was in stories told by survivors, passed into myth. But water is not the only destroyer. Fire, too, has its part. Some legends speak of fire from the sky, of burning stones that fell upon cities. Ancient texts describe suns darkened, stars blazing, skies torn with light. Could these be memories of comet impacts, of meteors striking the Earth with catastrophic force? Modern science tells us of the Younger Dryas event, a sudden cooling around 10800 BCE, possibly triggered by such an impact. If so, entire civilizations could have perished in a single generation, their ruins lost beneath ice and flood. Survivors would have carried the tale of fire and water stories that became the myths we know today. There is also the possibility of Earth itself turning against them. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, shifting continents. The story of Atlantis, as told by Plato, ends with the earth shaking and the sea swallowing. The island, Santorini, erupted in antiquity, destroying the Minoan civilization and sending waves across the Aegean. If such catastrophes can end known civilizations, what might they have done to unknown ones? Cities could be swallowed whole, leaving little behind but drowned stones and scattered legends. Yet there's another subtler cause, deliberate erasure. Sometimes civilizations do not simply fall, they are made to vanish. Conquerors destroy records, burn libraries, topple statues, the Library of Alexandria, the codices of the Maya, the shrines of forgotten gods, all consumed by flames or buried beneath conquest. If there were civilizations older than Sumer, their disappearance may have been not only by nature's hand, but by human will. Later people, rising in their place, may have sought to erase the memory of those before them, claiming themselves as the beginning. And if any fragments survived, they may have been hidden, carried into secret archives, perhaps even into the Vatican itself, locked away for fear of their implications. Let us imagine a city before Sumer, shining on the edge of an ancient sea. Its streets are paved with polished stone, its towers carved with symbols of stars. Its people chart the heavens with lenses, align their temples to solstices, build monuments with precision. They live for centuries, perhaps longer, their knowledge vast. Then comes disasters. The sea rises, the earth shakes, fire falls from the sky in days. The city is gone. Survivors flee inland, carrying fragments, a tablet, a story, a song. Generations later, their descendants no longer remember the city itself, only the tale of a flood, a fire, a lost golden age, and somewhere, perhaps, one or two of those tablets are carried across the centuries, preserved in temples, monasteries, finally resting in the vaults beneath Rome. The silence of disappearance is not total, though it leaves traces, the very strange clues we have seen: maps too old, stones too precise, myths too similar. But the disappearance itself remains mysterious, an enigma. How can something so great vanish so completely, and why do only whispers remain? Perhaps this is why the Vatican guards its silence, for within its vaults there may lie not only proof of these civilizations, but also accounts of their fall, records of catastrophes that might one day repeat. To reveal them would not only rewrite history, but remind humanity of its fragility. Consider the psychology of silence. If humanity believes it is the first, the beginning, then it feels secure. But if it learns that others came before, greater and wiser, and fell, then we are forced to confront our own impermanence. Perhaps the Vatican, as guardian, believes it is protecting us from despair, or perhaps, more darkly, it seeks to preserve power, for whoever controls the story of the beginning controls the story of the present. There are also whispers of intentional concealment by those ancient civilizations themselves. Some legends speak of hidden chambers where knowledge was buried before the flood, vaults of wisdom sealed against catastrophe. The Egyptians spoke of the Hall of Records beneath the Sphinx, a chamber containing the wisdom of Zep Tepi. The Mayans spoke of records hidden in caves, awaiting rediscovery. If such chambers exist, perhaps fragments have been found, not announced to the world, but quietly taken into Rome, into the hands of those who would keep them sealed. And so, the disappearance of pre Sumerian civilizations is both natural and unnatural. Nature may have drowned them, burned them, shaken them into ruin. Humanity may have erased them, silenced them, hidden their memory. What remains is a haunting absence, a silence so deep it feels deliberate. The Vatican, in its vaults, holds that silence like a chalice. Whether it is mercy or control, preservation or suppression, we cannot say, but the effect is the same. Civilizations older than Sumer, if they existed, are known not through chronicles, but through whispers, through absence. Let us linger in this silence. Imagine standing on the shore of the Atlantic at sunset. The sea stretches endless, its waves glowing with fading light. Beneath those waters, perhaps, lie the ruins of a city, its stones cold, its streets empty, its people gone. The wind carries no voice, only the sound of the sea. And yet, within the vaults of Rome, perhaps a manuscript rests that describes this very city, its glory, its fall, sealed in cedar, tied in cord, unseen for centuries. The silence of the sea and the silence of the vault mirror one another, both conceal, both endure. Every disappearance leaves an echo. That echo lingers in myths, in artifacts, in the Vatican's guarded silence. We do not see the civilizations themselves, but we sense the void where they once were. Like shadows of trees long fallen, their absence shapes the light. And if ever those vaults were opened, if ever those manuscripts were revealed, the silence would break, and the story of humanity would lengthen by millennia. The bells of Rome toll softly across the city. The night deepens. Beneath the Vatican, archivists walk through corridors of locked doors. Behind those doors, perhaps, lie accounts of worlds drowned, cities burned, peoples vanished, accounts of a fall so complete that it left no trace but whispers. For now, the silence remains. But even silence is a clue. And so, from the mysterious disappearance of civilizations, we turn to what remains their legacy, faint but persistent, carried across time. For even in absence, they left impressions like footprints in sand not yet erased by the tide. When a civilization vanishes, it does not always vanish completely, like footprints pressed into wet earth. Something remains even after the walker has gone: a chipped stone tool, a broken tablet, a song sung to children in the dark. These remnants, scattered like fragments of a shattered vessel, are not enough to reveal the whole, but they are enough to hint. And when those fragments are gathered across continents, across cultures, across centuries, they begin to suggest that something older, greater, stranger once existed before the dawn of Sumer. The most enduring legacy is myth. Myths, for all their shifting faces, carry a strange endurance. The Greeks spoke of Atlantis, the Egyptians of Zep Tepi, the Sumerians of antediluvian kings, the Hindus of cyclical ages, the Mayans of worlds created and destroyed. Each story is different, yet each carries the same undertone. There were ages before this one, and they ended in catastrophe. Myths survive not as fact, but as memory refracted through generations. They are stories told by survivors, reshaped by tongues, clothed in symbol, and though they appear as fables, they are perhaps the truest legacy of all. Architecture is another legacy. Across the world stand stones whose builders we barely understand. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned with true north to a fraction of a degree. Stonehenge, calibrated to solstices, the vast trilithons of Baalbek. Stones so massive they baffle engineers even now. In South America, Sacsayhuaman's walls lock boulders together so tightly that even a blade of grass cannot slip between them. Göbekli Tepe, older than agriculture, carved with animal reliefs 12,000 years ago. Each of these structures is astonishing in itself, but taken together, they suggest a shared inheritance knowledge of stone, star, and scale that should not have existed in the times we assign them. Could they be echoes of pre Sumerian civilizations, their builders carrying fragments of knowledge from worlds lost to flood and fire? Symbols, too, endure. The spiral, carved into stones from Ireland to the Americas, the serpent, winding through myths from Asia to Africa, the cross, long before Christianity, appearing in petroglyphs and patterns, the sun disk, the winged figure, the eye that sees all. These motifs reappear in cultures separated by oceans, millennia, languages, coincidence, some say to collective archetypes, others claim. But what if they are legacies, symbols carried by survivors of a vanished civilization spread across the earth, each culture interpreting them anew, yet preserving their essence? If so, the Vatican's archives may contain records tying these symbols to a common origin, documents too disruptive to release. There are also legacies of language. Linguists note strange similarities between tongues distant in space and time. The structure of Sumerian, unique and unrelated to later languages, suggests an inheritance we cannot trace. The Sanskrit of India carries echoes of Indo European roots that spread across continents. Polynesian languages preserve names of homelands now lost. Could these be fragments of older tongues, descendants of languages spoken by civilizations erased? If manuscripts of those tongues survive, perhaps buried in the Vatican's vaults, they would confirm connections our history does not yet recognize. Rituals and traditions, too, may be legacy. Fair rituals in India, sun ceremonies in the Americas, initiations in caves, pilgrimages to sacred mountains. Each carries elements of deep antiquity, often tied to astronomy, fertility, cycles of life and death. Why such similarity across the globe? Perhaps because they all descend from older practices carried by scattered survivors of pre Sumerian peoples. Imagine a group fleeing a drowned city, carrying not only tools and tablets, but rituals, prayers to the sun, dances of renewal, chants of stars. Centuries later, those rituals survive in altered form, but their essence remains. They are living fossils, legacies of lost civilizations disguised as religion. Another legacy may be knowledge hidden in plain sight calendars. The Mayan long count measured cycles of time stretching back thousands of years, far before their own recorded history. The Egyptians tracked the rising of Sirius to mark the Nile floods. The Druids calibrated Stonehenge to solar cycles. Even the Sumerians, considered the first, spoke of ages before the flood. These calendars suggest that ancient peoples inherited knowledge of time deeper than their own civilizations could have produced. Where did it come from? Perhaps from those who came before. Legacies may also lie beneath the earth and sea. Archaeologists uncover anomalies, sunken structures off the coast of Japan at Yonaguni, submerged ruins near India's Gulf of Cambay, drowned cities in the Mediterranean. Many dispute them, some dismiss them as natural formations, but others see in their stones the remnants of cities swallowed by rising seas. If proven, they would confirm that civilizations once flourished in times we call prehistory. Perhaps the Vatican holds charts of these places, accounts brought by explorers, sealed in its archives. To reveal them would be to confirm that humanity's legacy is older and broader than we believe. Even science carries faint echoes. DNA studies show that humans today carry traces of lineages long vanished. Denisovans, Neanderthals, mysterious ghost populations. We know our blood remembers more than our history records. Could it be that our very genes are legacies, carrying whispers of peoples whose civilizations were erased in the Vatican's vaults? Perhaps our ancient texts that describe lineages forgotten, connecting myth to biology in ways we are only beginning to glimpse. But perhaps the strangest legacy is silence itself, the absence of record where records should be, the deliberate burning of libraries, the destruction of codices, the suppression of tech, and why such consistent erasure? What truth was so dangerous that it had to be silenced across continents? Silence, too, is a legacy the shadow cast by something too immense to reveal. Imagine walking through the Vatican's secret archives. The lantern glows faint, casting amber light upon endless shelves. There are manuscripts in Latin, Greek, Hebrew, but deeper in, stranger scrolls appear, scripts no scholar outside has seen, symbols older than cuneiform, older than hieroglyphs. Some are maps of lands erased, others calendars of cycles longer than recorded history. One scroll tells of a city built upon pillars, destroyed by flood. Another describes gods who were not divine but human kings, reigning for thousands of years. Each is a fragment, a legacy of a world before worlds, and all are sealed in silence, guarded by archivists who see themselves not as deceivers, but as protectors of humanity from truths it cannot bear. For the Vatican, perhaps, the legacy of pre-Sumerian civilizations is both burden and treasure. To reveal it would shake the foundations of religion and history. To conceal it preserves order, but denies truth. And so the legacy lingers in whispers, in symbols, in ruins, in silence, enough to haunt, never enough to prove. The bells of Rome toll softly in the night. Above, pilgrims kneel in St. Peter's Square, gazing at the dome. Below, archivists pass by chests bound in iron, each containing fragments of civilizations older than Sumer. Some fragments are myths, some are stones, some are silence itself. Together they are the legacy of what came before. But legacies are not only echoes of the past, they are also seeds for the future. For from these fragments arise modern theories, speculations, questions, investigation. And so, from legacy we turn to thought, from silence to wonder. The fragments of legacy scattered myths, anomalous stones, submerged ruins, unexplained alignments are like broken pieces of a shattered mirror. Each reflects a glimpse of something older, stranger, perhaps truer than the history we know. But modern minds, restless and insatiable, cannot resist trying to piece those fragments together. Out of this longing come theories bold, strange, sometimes ridiculed, sometimes revered. They may not agree on details, but they share one conviction that humanity is older and more complex than our textbooks allow. One of the most enduring theories is that of Atlantis, popularized by Plato. Embraced by mystics, scholars, and adventurers alike, Atlantis has become the archetype of the lost civilization. Some place it in the Mediterranean, others in the Caribbean, others beneath the icy crust of Antarctica. Writers like Ignatius Donnelly in the 19th century argued that Atlantis was the mother culture of all later civilizations, that Egypt, Sumer, and Mesoamerica were its children, inheriting fragments of its knowledge. Critics dismiss this as fantasy, yet each new discovery of a submerged ruin, each anomalous artifact, breathes life back into the theory. Could the Vatican's vaults hold records that confirm or deny Atlantis, a scroll from Alexandria, a map from a forgotten monastery, an inscription carried by crusaders, evidence too dangerous to reveal? Another theory circles around Zep Tepi, the Egyptian first time. Some researchers suggest that the alignments of the pyramids and the Sphinx point not to the era of the pharaohs, but to star configurations from 10 to 500 BCE, long before dynastic Egypt. If true, the monuments may be inheritances, not inventions. Mainstream archaeology resists such claims, but the persistence of the idea suggests otherwise. And if the Vatican holds texts recovered from Egypt, papyri describing rulers before the flood, or knowledge passed down from Zep Tepi itself, then its silence may be the strongest clue of all. Then there are the theories of catastrophe. Scholars like Immanuel Velikovsky once proposed that ancient myths record real cosmic events, comet strikes, planetary upheavals that destroyed earlier civilizations. More recently, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests a comet shattered over North America 12,800 years ago, triggering floods, fires, and the sudden end of an age. If this is true, then the flood myths are not allegory but memory, and the civilizations that perished were real. What if Vatican archives contain records copied from older sources describing skies torn by fire, seas rising in days, cities swallowed whole? Some theories lean toward the esoteric. Theosophists in the 19th century spoke of Lemuria, a vanished continent in the Indian Ocean, home to a race of spiritually advanced beings. Others spoke of Mu, a Pacific continent that sank beneath the sea. These ideas, though discredited in academia, linger in the popular imagination. They may be fanciful, but perhaps they echo faint truths, distorted memories of real lands lost when seas rose at the end of the Ice Age. The Vatican, inheriting fragments of texts from missionaries, travelers, or explorers, may have records that lend substance to these tales, or records it keeps hidden to prevent confusion. Then there are the ancient astronaut theories popularized in the 20th century by writers like Erich von Däniken. According to this view, the gods of old were visitors from beyond the earth who bestowed knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and construction upon early humanity. The monuments, myths, and anomalies are not the work of lost human civilizations, but of contact with something other. Critics scoff, but the theory persists, fueled by the sheer strangeness of the evidence. Could the Vatican, with its deep involvement in theology and its suspicion of heresy, conceal texts suggesting encounters between humans and beings not of this world? If such records exist, their implications would be vast, reshaping both religion and history. More grounded, yet no less radical, are theories of cyclical time. The Hindu yugas, the Mayan cycles, the Platonic great year all suggest that civilization rises and falls in great patterns, not in a straight line of progress. According to this view, we are not the first, but merely the latest in a series of rises and collapses. If the Vatican holds records of earlier cycle, it would explain its silence. To reveal them would be to suggest that our age, too, will fall, that no empire, no civilization, not even ours, endures forever. Even within mainstream archaeology, cracks appear. Göbekli Tepe, dating to 9600 BCE, is far older than Sumer and built with astonishing sophistication. Submerged ruins off India's coast suggest cities drowned thousands of years before written history. The alignment of Angkor Wat with skies 12,000 years old hints at forgotten knowledge. These discoveries push the boundaries of the official narrative, forcing scholars to reconsider what civilization means. And yet, the Vatican remains silent, neither confirming nor denying, but quietly watching. Modern theories also circle around the Vatican itself. Some suggest that within its archives lie documents rescued from Alexandria's fires, describing civilizations before Egypt. Others believe the Templars brought back secrets from beneath Jerusalem, now sealed beneath Rome. Some whisper that during World War II, Nazis glimpsed forbidden manuscripts, confirming their obsessions with ancient power. Still others claim that certain popes, upon reading these documents, fell into despair, realizing that the story of creation, as taught to billions, was only one chapter of a much longer book. But why silence theories abound? One suggests protection, that to reveal humanity's older past would destabilize faith, society, even sanity. Another suggests control, that by withholding the truth of our origins, the Vatican maintains authority. A third suggests humility, that the knowledge itself is too vast, too strange for our age to comprehend. To open the vaults would be to open Pandora's box. Imagine a Vatican archivist in the modern day. In his hands, he holds a manuscript brittle, ancient, its ink faint but legible. It describes a land where the sun set in the west and rose in the east, where cities glittered before the flood. It speaks of rulers not of Sumer, but of a people whose names we do not know. The archivist knows the world is not ready. He ties the cord, seals the scroll, returns it to its chest. Above, scholars debate Atlantis, Zep Tepi, lost continents. Below, the truth slumbers, guarded by silence. In this sense, modern theories are not merely speculation, they are echoes pressing against the locked doors of the archives. Each theory Atlantis, Zep Tepi, catastrophe, cycles, even ancient astronauts as a shape in the fog, trying to outline what is hidden. And the Vatican's silence only fuels them, for silence is never neutral. It suggests there is something to hide. The modern world is impatient. Technology digs deeper each year. Satellites scan the Earth. LiDAR reveals buried ruins. Genetics unravels lineages. Physics reimagines time. Each discovery edges closer to rewriting history. Each makes the Vatican's silence harder to maintain. Perhaps one day the theories will not remain theories. The fragments will align, the pieces will form a picture, and the vaults will no longer be the only guardians of truth. For now, we dwell in speculation. Modern theories swirl like constellations in the night sky, each a star, incomplete on its own, but together forming patterns. Some may be illusions, others truths, but all point to the same possibility that humanity is older, stranger, and more fragile than we remember. The bells of Rome toll in the evening air. In the streets, tourists gaze at art and stone. Pilgrims kneel in prayer. Beneath, archivists walk through the labyrinth of shelves, past chests and scrolls that could confirm or deny the theories above. The world wonders, debates, imagines. The Vatican remains silent, and in that silence, theories thrive like vines in shadow, reaching upward toward the light. From theories, we turn to evidence, to discoveries unearthed in soil and stone, texts recovered from caves and ruins, artifacts that cannot be dismissed so easily. For while theories whisper, discoveries speak, even if their language is yet to be understood. If myths are whisper and theories are echoes, then archaeological discoveries are like stones breaking the surface of still water. They are tangible, undeniable, fragments of truth pulled from the earth or sea. Some fit neatly into the story we tell ourselves, but others, stubborn and strange, resist all explanation. These are the pieces that hint at civilizations older than Sumer, the kind that scholars debate, skeptics dismiss, and dreamers cling to. And somewhere beneath Rome, perhaps, lie even more such fragments, gathered in silence, sealed against the world. Let us begin with Göbekli Tepe, a hill in southeastern Turkey. For millennia, it lay hidden beneath soil, dismissed as a natural mound. But when excavations began in the 1990s, the world gasped. Beneath the hill were vast stone enclosures, carved pillars decorated with animals, abstract symbols, even humanoid figures. The site was dated to around 9600 BCE, 7,000 years before Sumer. Here were hunter-gatherers who, according to our narrative, should not have known how to build in stone, who should not have organized labor on such a scale. And yet, they did. Göbekli Tepe rose from the earth like a forgotten chapter. Whispering civilization is older than we think. Why was it buried? Scholars believe its builders intentionally covered it, preserving it for reasons unknown. Was it an act of ritual closure or a desperate attempt to save knowledge from catastrophe? Some even suggest Göbekli Tepe is the inheritance of survivors, remnants of a lost civilization rebuilding what they could. And if the Vatican holds ancient texts from Mesopotamia, they may speak of this site, linking it to a story far older than recorded history. From Turkey, let us drift to the Sumerian tablets themselves. Thousands have been unearthed, tablets of law, trade, astronomy, myth, but among them is the Sumerian king list, a record that begins not with ordinary reigns, but with kings ruling for thousands of years before the flood. To mainstream historians, this is myth folded into record, yet the tablets insist these antediluvian kings were real. Could this be memory of an earlier epoch, when civilizations thrived before the deluge reset the world? If the Vatican holds copies or translations hidden from public view, they may contain details scrubbed from official narratives, names and places that point to cities older than Sumer itself. Now we descend into the caves of Qumran, where in the 20th century, shepherds discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden for 2,000 years. They revealed texts, long-lost hymns, laws, apocalyptic visions. Among them were references to cycles of time, battles between forces older than nations, secrets meant only for initiates, but scholars believe not all scrolls were released. Some remain locked away, too fragmented or too controversial to publish. Rumors persist that certain scrolls speak not only of Israel's history, but of cosmic events and civilizations swept away by flood and fire. Could copies of those suppressed scrolls rest in the Vatican, carefully guarded, withheld from scholars who might connect them to pre-Sumerian memories? Far to the east, India offers its own discoveries. Ancient Sanskrit texts, the Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana speak of times so vast they defy comprehension, yugas stretching tens of thousands of years, ages of giants, battles fought with flying chariots and weapons of terrible fire. These may be myth, yet when excavations uncover cities like Dwarka, long believed legend now found beneath the sea, one begins to wonder. If one legend proved real, how many others may hold truth? Imagine if the Vatican, through Jesuit missionaries, received copies of Vedic manuscripts centuries ago. Perhaps those texts sit now in its archives, alongside Greek and Hebrew, silently hinting at a pre-Sumerian world. Then there are the submerged ruins off the coast of Japan. At Yonaguni, divers discovered terraces, steps, and platforms beneath the sea. Some argue they are natural formations. Others insist they are the remnants of a city drowned when sea levels rose after the Ice Age. In India's Gulf of Cambay, sonar revealed structures miles long beneath the water's roads, walls, signs of habitation thousands of years older than the Indus Valley civilization. In the Mediterranean, ruins lie beneath the waves at Pavlopati and Atlat Yam, dating back to times when coastlines were different. Each of these submerged sites speaks of cities drowned, lives erased. If even a fraction belonged to organized civilizations, then Sumer was not the first. And if the Vatican has records, maps, traveler accounts, reports from missionaries, they may connect these ruins into a broader story of a drowned world. Artifacts, too, carry their own testimony. The Antikythera mechanism, a bronze device pulled from a Greek shipwreck, is an astronomical calculator with gears so precise it rivals modern clockwork. Scholars date it to the 2nd century BCE, but its sophistication suggests knowledge carried from earlier times. In Bolivia, the stones of Pumapunku are carved with such precision they seem cut by machines, their angles exact, their surfaces smooth as glass. In Egypt, the unfinished obelisk at Aswan shows quarry marks suggesting techniques we do not fully understand. Each artifact is a whisper of knowledge older than we admit. Could it be that these are not anomalies, but survival's legacies of a world erased before Sumer? There are also manuscripts that appear in strange places, only to vanish again. The Codex Giga, the Devil's Bible, created in the 13th century, contains texts from across eras, but legends say it also once included fragments of older knowledge, later removed. The Picatrix, a medieval grimoire of astrology and magic, claims to descend from ancient Chaldean sources, older than Babylon. The Corpus Hermeticum, preserved through Islamic scholars, speaks of divine wisdom from Egypt's earliest days. Each is a bridge backward, a survival of voices nearly silenced. And if older versions exist, where would they be kept, if not in Rome's vaults? Modern archaeology has also uncovered human remains that complicate our narrative. Skeletons from South Africa suggest organized communities hundreds of thousands of years old. Cave art in Indonesia, older than Lascaux, shows that symbolic thought flourished earlier than assumed. In Siberia, Denisovan remains speak of a lineage interwoven with our own, carrying knowledge we cannot trace. Each discovery adds another thread to the tapestry, one that stretches further back towards civilizations older than Sumer. Imagine now a Vatican archivist walking through a chamber lined with cedar chests. Within one chest lies a scroll from Egypt, describing Zep Tepi not as myth, but as history, with dates and rulers. In another chest lies a codex from the Americas, detailing cycles of time stretching beyond our current epoch. In a third lies a map, copied from older sources, showing coastlines as they were before the flood. Each is fragile, each explosive. To release them would be to undo centuries of narrative. To conceal them is to maintain silence. The discoveries we see in museums and excavation reports are only the ones permitted to the light, but how many more lie hidden, unpublished, suppressed? How many texts were carried quietly to Rome by missionaries, crusaders, explorers? How many artifacts lie in drawers, unstudied, labeled unidentified? Archaeology is not only what is found, but what is chosen to be seen. And the Vatican, with its reach across centuries, has had more chances than any to gather fragments of forgotten ages. Each discovery, Göbekli Tepe, submerged cities, anomalous artifacts, ancient texts, is a crack in the wall of history. The Vatican, in guarding its archives, may be guarding the greatest discovery of all, that humanity's story is not 5,000 years old, but far older. That we are the inheritors, not the inventors, of civilization. That Sumer was not the beginning, but a rebirth after a long silence. Night falls over Rome. The Tiber glimmers in moonlight. Above, pilgrims walk the piazza, gazing at the basilica's dome. Below, archivists move in silence, passing shelves heavy with manuscripts, drawers heavy with artifacts. Somewhere among them lie discoveries the world has not yet seen, discoveries that could rewrite history. For now, they remain in shadow, but shadows do not erase, they only delay. From here, our journey moves forward into the present, how these fragments, these discoveries connect to the world we live in now. For the past is never only past, it breathes into the present, shaping the stories we tell ourselves, the faiths we hold, the questions we cannot silence. The past is never truly past. It lingers in us like a breath, like the echo of a bell fading into silence. Even civilizations that may have vanished before Sumer still press against the present in our myths, in our sciences, in the very questions we cannot stop asking. Their presence is like a shadow at the edge of the firelight, unseen yet undeniable. And at the heart of it all, the Vatican remains, a guardian whose silence shapes how we understand ourselves. Consider first the realm of faith. For billions of believers, the story of humanity begins in Eden, or with Adam formed from dust. The Vatican, as the seat of Catholic authority, has long been the guardian of this narrative, but if it holds manuscripts suggesting civilizations thousands of years older than Sumer, then faith and history exist in tension. To reveal such knowledge would not necessarily destroy belief, but it would transform it. The Genesis story might be seen not as the literal beginning, but as one layer in a far deeper past. Some theologians might embrace this, others would resist. And so, silence continues. In silence, faith is protected, even as questions deepen. But the influence of forgotten civilizations extends beyond faith. It shapes science as well. Archaeologists, geneticists, and climatologists increasingly encounter anomalies that strain the timeline we accept. Göbekli Tepe pushes civilization back to 9600 BCE. Submerged ruins hint at cities drowned during post-glacial floods. DNA reveals ghost populations in our ancestry, peoples who vanished without record. Each discovery whispers humanity is older, more complex, more layered than we thought. Yet mainstream science hesitates to leap too far, for fear of losing footing. And in the background, the Vatican's silence is felt as though an unseen weight reinforces the boundaries of what is acceptable. In society, the longing for lost civilizations manifests in subtler ways. Stories of Atlantis, Lemuria, ancient gods, and golden ages appear in books, films, and dreams. They inspire seekers, mystics, or adventurers. They fuel conspiracy theories and spiritual quests alike. Some dismiss this as fantasy, but it reveals a deeper hunger, the human need to feel connected to something older, grander, enduring. We sense that our story did not begin in a single river valley 5,000 years ago. We yearn for continuity with forgotten ages. The Vatican, by holding silence, becomes the axis of this yearning. Its refusal to reveal becomes itself a presence, a paradoxical confirmation that there is something worth hiding. Even politics feels the tremor. Knowledge of civilizations older than Sumer would shift power. Nations build identity on history: who was first, who was greatest, who inherited the mantle of civilization. If a pre-Sumerian world were revealed, older than Mesopotamia, older than Egypt, then all claims would be overturned. Every nation would be a child, every culture a branch of a tree with roots deeper than we knew. Such knowledge could unite humanity in humility or divide it in jealousy. Perhaps the Vatican fears the latter, guarding silence as a form of protection. There are subtler connections still. Consider psychology. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious symbols and archetypes shared across humanity: the flood, the mother goddess, the sky father, the trickster, the dying and rising god. Why do these symbols appear in every culture, across oceans and centuries? Perhaps because they are echoes of older civilizations, legacies carried in story, in dream, in blood. The Vatican, keeper of countless myths, may know how deep these symbols run, may even possess texts that link them across cultures. To reveal them would be to show that humanity's unconscious memory is not imagination, but history. Technology, too, connects us to the past in unexpected ways. Satellites scan the Earth, LiDAR strips away jungles, sonar reveals submerged ruins. Each year, discoveries appear that once belonged only to myth. Angkor's hidden cities revealed beneath Cambodia's forests, road networks beneath the Amazon canopy, proving it once held vast civilizations. Temples beneath the sea off India's coast. The present has become a mirror, reflecting what the ancients may have known. And if the Vatican holds older maps, older records, then it may already possess knowledge we are only now rediscovering with machines. The Vatican's silence thus acts like a wall between past and present. On one side, humanity struggles to piece together its story. On the other side, perhaps, the story already lies written, preserved, waiting. This silence is not absence, it is an active force. It shapes what is studied, what is debated, what is dismissed. Scholars may scoff at Atlantis, but part of that scoff is the weight of silence behind them, the unspoken pressure that says, do not go further. And yet, the persistence of the question, what came before Sumer, shows that silence cannot erase, it only delays. Let us imagine for a moment what revelation would mean in the present. Suppose tomorrow the Vatican opened a vault and displayed a scroll dated to 12,000 BCE, describing a city with streets, laws, astronomy, and temples aligned to stars. Suppose it revealed a map showing coastlines as they were before the Ice Age floods, drawn by human hands. Suppose it displayed a codex from the Americas, detailing cycles of time stretching back tens of thousands of years. The world would shudder, faith would tremble, science would accelerate, the boundaries of history would dissolve, humanity would awaken to a deeper ancestry, not 5,000 years, but perhaps 50,000. Would we be ready? Some would rejoice, others would despair. Some would see unity, realizing we are all heirs to the same forgotten past. Others would see division, fighting for claims to ownership of that legacy. The Vatican, perhaps, fears this instability more than anything. Silence is safe, revelation is fear. And yet, silence itself fuels fire. In the absence of answers, people invent Atlantis, Lemuria, ancient astronauts, lost golden ages. These are the children of silence. They grow because the questions remain. If the Vatican's vaults were empty, if nothing were hidden, then silence would not matter. But because the silence is so heavy, so deliberate, the world cannot help but suspect. The very act of concealment connects past to present more strongly than any artifact could. There are also personal connections. Each of us, in quiet moments, senses the pull of antiquity, standing before the pyramids, gazing at a stone circle, walking ruins overtaken by jungle. We feel something awe, melancholy, familiarity. It is as if our souls remember what our minds have forgotten. This is the deepest connection to the present, the sense that we are not alone in time, but accompanied by echoes of those who came before. The Vatican's silence only heightens that feeling, like a curtain half drawn across a stage where shadows move. As we breathe in the present, the past exhales into us. The myths we tell, the discoveries we make, the dreams we carry, all are shaped by civilizations whose names are gone. And the Vatican, whether protector or suppressor, is the hinge. Its silence ties past to present like a knot. The bells of Rome toll again, marking the hour. In the piazza, the crowd moves, unaware of the vaults beneath their feet. In those vaults, manuscripts lie in cedar chests, maps folded in silence, codices wrapped in silk. They connect to us not by being revealed, but by being withheld. The present is shaped not only by what we know, but by what we are not allowed to know. That is the Vatican's power. And so, the story moves onward from connection to present. We drift toward questions, questions that linger like incense, that haunt like dreams, that cannot be silenced. For what is hidden always calls to be revealed, and what is silenced always echoes in the heart. History, for all its chronicles and timelines, is built upon question. Behind every stone lifted from the soil, every manuscript unrolled from its bindings, there is a silence, a gap we cannot fill, and within those gaps lie the questions that will not rest. When we speak of civilizations older than Sumer, of vaults beneath the Vatican, of myths that shimmer with fragments of truth, we are not speaking of certainties but of echoes. The questions remain like voices drifting from a far shore. The first question is the simplest and the most haunting. How old is civilization? Truly, our textbooks begin in Mesopotamia, with clay tablets and city walls rising in the 4th millennium BCE. Yet Göbekli Tepe pushes us back to 9600 BCE. Submerged ruins off India and Japan suggest cities drowned 12,000 years ago. Myths speak of floods and fires even older still. If these fragments are true, then what is the real beginning? Did humanity rise only once or many times in cycles of growth and collapse? And if so, how many ages have come before ours, lost in the silence of time? The second question follows: why does every culture remember catastrophe from Sumer to the Andes, from Polynesia to Mesopotamia? Floods, fires, and darkness haunt the myths. Were these mere symbols of rebirth or memories of real events, comet impacts, shifting seas, volcanic fury? And if they were real, how many civilizations did they erase? Survivors may have carried their stories into new lands, telling them as myths to their children until memory blurred into legend. But what if somewhere, in a chest beneath Rome, lies a record that describes these catastrophes not as allegory, but as lived history? Another question lingers: what knowledge have we forgotten? The pyramids, the megaliths, the astronomical alignments all suggest sophistication out of place. Did ancient peoples inherit technologies or methods from predecessors? Legends speak of sound used to move stone, of lights that shone without fire, of weapons of terrible brilliance. We dismiss these as metaphor, but what if they are memories of sciences we no longer possess? If the Vatican holds texts from Alexandria or manuscripts from India, they may preserve hints of such knowledge locked away, too disruptive to reveal. Then comes the most delicate question: why silence? Why would the Vatican, if it holds records of civilizations older than Sumer, keep them hidden? Is it to protect faith, to shield society from truths too destabilizing, or is it to preserve power, to control the narrative of humanity's beginning? Some argue it is mercy, others manipulation, but in either case, the silence is itself a revelation. For silence of this weight suggests there is something to hide. If nothing existed before Sumer, the vaults could open freely. The locks themselves are an answer. We might also ask, what has slipped through? During the sack of Rome, Napoleon's looting, the chaos of war's manuscripts were taken, scattered. How many are now lying in private libraries, unrecognized, their secrets unread? How many of our modern theories, Atlantis, Lemuria, cycles of time, are not fantasies, but faint reflections of truths that once escaped the Vatican's grip? The possibility lingers that fragments of older civilizations or move among us, disguised as legend, waiting for recognition. Another echo drifts through myth. Were the gods once human? Sumerian tablets speak of rulers who reigned for thousands of years. Egyptian texts of divine beings ruling in Zep Tepi. Hindu scriptures of avatars descending in past yugas. Are these gods merely metaphors or memories of an advanced race, perhaps not divine, but human in form, carrying knowledge so great it seemed divine to those who came after, if so? then humanity's history is not only older, but stranger, a tapestry of forgotten teachers and erased kings. We are left with the unsettling question, could it happen again if civilizations have risen and fallen before, erased by flood, fire, or silence? Then ours too is not eternal. The Vatican, perhaps, guards this truth most fiercely of all. To know that civilizations die is one thing, to know that they die in cycles inevitably is another. If manuscripts in its vaults describe such cycles, then they may not only speak of the past, but also of the future. Are we merely another age in the pattern destined to fall, remembered only as myth by those who come after? The echoes linger also in our dreams. Why do so many people feel drawn to lost worlds, to Atlantis, to forgotten temples, to vanished lands? Why do dreams carry images of floods, of ruins, of stars shifting in the sky? Perhaps memory lies deeper than we think, not only in texts, but in blood, in soul. Perhaps our yearning for the lost past is itself a legacy, the unconscious remembering what the conscious mind has forgotten. And so the questions multiply. Did survivors of pre Sumerian civilizations scatter across the earth, seeding cultures with fragments of knowledge? Why do symbols repeat across continents? Are pyramids, spirals, crosses, and serpents coincidental or deliberate echoes? What lies beneath the Sphinx? What sleeps in flooded caves? What is bound in cedar chests beneath Rome? The Vatican, in its silence, becomes not merely a guardian, but a mirror. Against its silence, our questions grow sharper, our echoes louder. The absence of answers forces us to imagine, to connect fragments, to dream of what might be. Perhaps this is the truest legacy of the hidden past, not certainty, but yearning. Picture Rome at night. The piazza of St. Peter's is nearly empty, its stones glowing faintly beneath lamps. Above, the dome looms like a silent moon. Beneath, the vaults stretch into shadow. Inside one chamber lies a manuscript, written in a script no one now alive can read. It tells of a city swallowed by sea, a people whose reign spanned thousands of years, a fall that left only silence. The archivist passes it by, lantern in hand, his face unreadable. The manuscript waits, as it has waited for centuries. Outside, humanity asks questions. Inside, the answers sleep. The open questions do not weaken us, they strengthen. For in their mystery, we are reminded that we are not the end of the story. We are not the first to walk the earth, nor will we be the last. The echoes of older civilizations linger in myth, in stone, in silence. They call to us across time, inviting us not to certainty, but to wonder. And perhaps that is the deepest connection to the present, not proof, but possibility, not answers, but echoes, the Vatican's silence, the anomalies of archaeology, the myths of the world together, they create a song half heard, a dream half remembered. It lingers in us like incense in the air, subtle yet inescapable. The bells of Rome toll midnight. The sound drifts across the sleeping city, then fades into silence. Yet in that silence, the questions remain, echoing in the heart of humanity. For questions, once born, do not die. They wait, like the civilizations they recall, for the moment they will rise again. The earth is more than soil and stone. It is memory. Every river valley, every mountain ridge, every desert expanse holds within it the breath of ages that came before us. When we speak of civilizations older than Sumer, it is not only in manuscripts or myths that their traces linger, it is in the landscapes themselves. The world is a vast library, and its pages are hills, oceans, and ruins hidden beneath roots. To walk upon it is to walk upon echoes. Zum Begin with the seas. Beneath their dark surface lie entire worlds. Off the coast of India, near Dwarka, divers discovered submerged walls, steps, and streets a city now drowned, yet spoken of in Hindu epic as Krishna's fabled capital. In Japan's Yonaguni waters, divers swim past stepped terraces carved into the seabed, too precise to be mere geology. Along the Mediterranean, stories whisper of islands swallowed by waves, echoes of Atlantis, perhaps, or of cities that fell when the ice age melted and seas rose more than 100 meters. When the ocean breathes, it exhales memory, carrying fragments of pottery, pillars encrusted with coral, statues asleep beneath silt. These drowned cities are not silent. They sing through currents and through myths, their voices muffled but not gone. From seas, we move to the deserts, those landscapes of silence where sand itself seems to whisper. The Sahara was once green, a vast savanna of lakes and rivers. Beneath its dunes, satellite images reveal strange patterns, lines too straight, shapes too deliberate, as though buried cities sleep beneath the sands. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of lands beyond, kingdoms older still. Some suggest that civilizations flourished there before desert winds covered them. The Vatican, with its access to ancient maps, may know what lies beneath those sands, may possess knowledge of forgotten empires swallowed by dunes. The desert, with its shifting silence, is like a veil drawn across memory. Then come the mountains, guardians of the sky. In the Andes, megaliths lie scattered across high plateau stones so massive that even modern machines would strain to move them. Tiwanaku and Pumapunku whisper of a past whose tools we do not understand. Higher still, ice conceals ruins that may never be seen. Legends of the Himalayas speak of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom untouched by time. Could these mountains guard not only myths, but memories of pre-Sumerian ages, preserved in ice and stone, as glaciers retreat, as valleys reveal what has long been sealed? The earth may yet breathe out secrets too long hidden. In the forests, life itself becomes a shroud. The Amazon, when stripped by LiDAR scans, reveals straight roads, vast geometric earthworks, and remnants of cities capable of sustaining millions. For centuries, the forest was thought untamed, but beneath its green canopy lies memory of a civilization erased. In Cambodia, Angkor's temples rise like stone flowers from jungle roots, but even greater cities lie beneath the soil, discovered only in the last decade. If these great civilizations could be forgotten so quickly, then how much more could be erased by 10,000 years, and what manuscripts, hidden in Roman vaults, describe them more clearly than we yet know? There are landscapes that are more than physical enchanted places, where the veil between past and present seem thin. Consider the plain of Nazca, its geoglyphs only visible from the sky. Who carved them and why? Standing there, beneath the unbroken sky, one feels the weight of unseen eyes, as though the past still watches, or the great stone heads of Easter Island staring inland with solemn faces, guarding secrets of voyagers who once crossed oceans with maps we cannot imagine. These enchanted places are not curiosities. They are reminders that humanity's story is vast and that landscapes themselves hold memory. The polar regions are landscapes of silence at the edges of the earth. Antarctica, buried beneath kilometers of ice, is whispered to conceal mountains, rivers, even ruins unseen for millennia. Satellite images hint at structures, though science remains cautious. Legends speak of lands of eternal ice where ancient peoples fled after floods drowned the world. If manuscripts within the Vatican confirm this, then our maps are not merely incomplete, they are veils drawn across truth. Ice guard its secrets well, but it cannot hold them forever. As the climate shifts, Antarctica may awaken, revealing chapters of history long suppressed. Even beneath our feet, in the caves, lie landscapes of memory. Subterranean labyrinths in Turkey, such as Derinkuyu, stretch for miles, capable of housing thousands. Were they built to escape enemies or to survive catastrophes older than memory? In Malta, Hypogeum, Halsaflieni resounds with acoustics so strange that chants within it vibrate through bone. Who built such places, and what knowledge guided their hands? Each cave is both womb and tomb, holding echoes of lives erased. The Vatican, as collector of ancient records, may know which caves were sanctuaries of the lost, which were tombs of civilizations erased by time. What makes these landscapes enchanted is not only what lies hidden, but how they make us feel. To stand upon a cliff above the sea, or in a desert where stars blaze unbroken, is to feel the breath of ages. The world itself whispers to us if we are still enough to listen. In the salt of the ocean, in the heat of sand, in the hush of snow, memory lingers. These sensations are as much history as any text. And yet, landscapes are fragile. Seas rise, deserts spread, forests burn. Each change erases a page, removes a layer. We are both heirs and destroyers of memory. If the Vatican preserves manuscripts that describe these enchanted places as they once were, then those texts are more than curiosities. They are mirrors of what the earth itself once sang. Perhaps the Vatican fears that to reveal them would change how we see the world itself, not merely the past. Imagine walking through St. Peter's Basilica at dawn. Light filters through stained glass, coloring marble in hues of rose and gold. Beneath, in the archives, rests a map drawn not on paper, but etched into thin sheets of copper. It shows rivers flowing through what is now desert, cities where the Sahara now lies silent, harbors now beneath the sea. The archivist runs his hand across its surface, then places it back into shadow. Above, pilgrims pray, unaware that beneath their knees lies proof that the landscapes they know are but shadows of what once was. The earth is alive with memory. Seas remember cities drowned. Deserts remember rivers lost. Mountains remember temples hidden in ice. Forests remember roads forgotten. Caves remember voices that sang in the dark. And in Rome, memory waits behind locked doors, silent but unbroken. These enchanted landscapes call to us. They are not dead. They breathe in silence. They whisper in dreams. They remind us that we walk not on empty ground, but upon layers of time, each step an echo of ages forgotten. Civilization may have risen and fallen before Sumer, may rise and fall again. The earth itself bears witness, even when we do not. And so we move onward, beyond landscapes, beyond memory. We turn to the stories themselves, the legends that run in parallel across continents, as if humanity once spoke with a single tongue. These legends, like the landscapes, are enchanted. They are rivers of memory that converge, carrying fragments of a forgotten whole. And they, too, whisper of civilizations older than Sumer. Legends are not idle dreams. They are echoes, rippling through generations, changing shape as they pass, but never losing their core. When the same stories appear in lands separated by oceans, among peoples who never met, one begins to wonder, are these parallel legends fragments of the same truth? If civilizations older than Sumer once walked this earth, perhaps their memories scattered like sparks into every culture, and those sparks still glow, hidden within myth. Consider the flood stories. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, who survived a flood sent by the gods to cleanse the earth. In the Bible, Noah builds his ark, carrying animals two by two. In Hindu scripture, Manu is warned by a fish to build a boat and survive rising waters. In Mesoamerica, the Maya spoke of floods that ended ages, while in Polynesia, chants recall waves swallowing entire islands. These stories, distant yet identical in essence, may be more than metaphor. Could they be fractured memories of a catastrophe, an end that erased one civilization and birthed another? If so, the Vatican archives may hold texts describing this event not as allegory, but as chronicle. Now consider the golden ages remembered across the globe. The Greeks spoke of a time when gods and mortals lived together in harmony, when the earth gave abundantly and suffering was unknown. Hinduism tells of Satya Yuga, the first of four ages, when truth and virtue reigned. The Andean peoples spoke of Viracocha, who brought light and law in an earlier, better world. Even the Norse recalled an age before corruption, when Asgard was bright and pure. Are these myths dreams of paradise, or memories of an age before collapse, an age of civilization older than any we know? If fragments of texts describing such an age lie within Vatican vaults, then perhaps our myths are simply echoes of that same forgotten dawn. Across cultures, sky beings descend. In Sumer, the Anunnaki arrive from the heavens, bringing knowledge of kingship and law. In Egypt, the gods sail across the sky in solar boats, teaching humanity order and ma'at. The Dogon of Mali tell of beings from Sirius who descended to instruct them in star knowledge. In the Andes, Viracocha emerges from the sea, glowing with power, and walks among men. Even in North America, the Hopi speak of Kachina's star spirits who visit to guide humanity. These stories converge on one theme: teachers from beyond. Whether gods, ancestors, or advanced humans, their footprints press deeply into legend. Could they be the remnants of a pre-Sumerian civilization so advanced it seemed divine? Perhaps some record, hidden beneath Rome, preserves their true nature, not gods, but survivors, guiding the next age. Then there are the mother goddesses, worshipped in forms both similar and strange: Ishtar in Mesopotamia, Isis in Egypt, Shakti in India, Pachamama in the Andes, all embody fertility, creation, the cycle of birth and death. Their statues, some older than 20,000 years, appear with the same rounded forms, the same emphasis on life and renewal. How did these figures echo from cave to temple, from one continent to another? Perhaps they recall a time when humanity worshipped a single great mother, a memory of the earth itself, or of a civilization that venerated the feminine divine long before Sumer rose. The Vatican, inheritor of ancient traditions, may have absorbed this memory into its symbols: the Madonna, the nurturing mother, the eternal feminine hidden beneath layers of dogma. And then the vanished lands. Atlantis, described by Plato as an island beyond the Pillars of Hercules, destroyed in a single night of fire and flood. Lemuria, whispered in the Indian Ocean, connecting Africa, India, and Madagascar, much said to stretch across the Pacific, where great temples once stood. Though modern science treats these as fables, their persistence across time is curious. Why do so many cultures insist on lands lost to the sea? If manuscripts within the Vatican's vaults contain ancient maps, maps showing continents now drowned, then these legends are no longer dreams, but half forgotten truths. In weaving these parallels, one cannot ignore the serpent motif. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, brings knowledge of agriculture and law. In India, Nagas dwell beneath rivers, wise and dangerous. In Africa, the rainbow serpent curves across myth as creator and guardian. Even in Genesis, a serpent offers forbidden knowledge. Across the globe, serpents appear as bringers of wisdom, boundary crossers between worlds. Could they represent a single symbol carried from one vanished civilization, a code embedded in story so it could never be erased? The giants, too, walk across legends: the Nephilim of Genesis, the Titans of Greece, the Jotnar of Norse sagas, the Viracochas of Peru, always taller, stronger, remnants of a race before us. Bones are rumored, unearthed, then hidden. The Vatican is often accused of possessing them locked away in chambers never opened. Are these tales of giants only allegory, or faint memories of a humankind now extinct? Even the sunken underworlds echo across myth. The Greeks had Hades, the Maya had Xibalba, the Japanese spoke of Yomi, always a land beneath, always a place where the dead journey, but also where wisdom lies hidden. Could this be memory of subterranean sanctuaries, labyrinths built to survive, catastrophe transformed in memory into realms of shadow daring Kuyu? Hypogeum, the endless caves of the Americas, all are reminders that below us may lie more than myth. When one listens carefully, these legends do not contradict, they overlap. Floods, golden ages, sky beings, mother goddesses, vanished lands, serpents, giants, they are like fragments of a mosaic, scattered across the world. If assembled, they may form the picture of a civilization, forgotten yet remembered in every myth. Perhaps this is why the Vatican guards its silence so fiercely, for within its vaults may lie the missing pieces, the texts that confirm that Atlantis was real, that gods were men, that ages rise and fall in cycles. To reveal them would not only alter history, it would show that all myths are one story, told in different tongues. Humanity would see itself not as a recent miracle, but as the heir of countless forgotten ages. Picture, for a moment, an archivist in Rome. He holds in his hands a manuscript, older than parchment, perhaps pressed onto thin sheets of beaten copper. Its language is alien, its symbols both serpent and sun. He knows fragments of this story. He has seen them in Egyptian papyri, in Mayan codices, in Greek epics, but here they are woven whole, a story of a flood that drowned a golden age, of survivors who became gods, of lands swallowed by the sea. He closes the manuscript, locks it away, and whispers a prayer. The legends must remain legends. The fragments must never be allowed to form a whole. Yet outside, humanity continues to weave, in the dreams of children, in the stories of elders, in the symbols carved into temple stones. The memory persists. Legends are rivers, and rivers converge. The truth may already be flowing toward us, unstoppable as tide. And so we listen. We listen to the flood myths, the golden ages, the sky beings, the mother goddesses, the vanished lands. We listen to serpents and giants, to underworlds and shining teachers. They are parallel lines, running side by side, but somewhere in the distance they converge into a single horizon. There, perhaps, the truth of civilizations older than Sumer still waits, shimmering like a mirage just beyond reach. As the night deepens, the legends whisper more urgently. They do not ask us to believe, they ask us to remember. And remembering, we step closer to the hidden past, carried not by certainty but by echoes. Some mysteries vanish completely, like ink washed away by rain. Others leave behind a trace faint, almost invisible, but enduring enough to catch the eye of those who know how to look. If civilizations older than Sumer truly walked this earth, then surely they must have left such traces, not whole histories, not monuments that tower untouched, but fragments drifting into our age like pieces of flotsam carried on a dark tide. These traces surface in curious places: a shard of pottery with symbols no known culture claims, a map that marks a coastline long before explorers charted it, an alignment of stars etched into stone thousands of years before astronomy. Each fragment by itself seems insignificant, but together they form a pattern, one that hints of a story hidden beneath the surface. Consider the Piri race map, drawn in the year 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. On its curling parchment lines, South America appears far more accurately than it should, as if the cartographer had access to charts made centuries earlier. Even more baffling, the map seems to depict Antarctica, not as a land of ice, but with visible coastlines, suggesting knowledge of its geography long before it was officially discovered. Some scholars dismiss this as coincidence. Others whisper that the map is a trace, a copy of a copy of a copy, passed down from a civilization that once sailed seas we cannot imagine. Then there are the enigmatic stones and carvings that seem to carry symbols from a language without a home. At Göbekli Tepe, in the hills of Anatolia, pillars rise carved with animals, abstract shapes, and constellations. They date back 12,000 years, twice as old as Sumer. Archaeologists struggle to place them in the known timeline. Who built them? Nomads, it is said. But how could nomads carve and align with such sophistication? These stone pillars, buried deliberately, are a trace, a message in a bottle cast from the end of one age to the beginning of another. In the Americas, among the highlands of Peru, the stones of Sacsayhuaman are pressed so tightly together that no blade can slide between them. Their weight is colossal, their angles strange. Local legend claims the stones were softened like clay, shaped with a knowledge long lost. Who taught the builders this skill? If one listens closely, the stones themselves seem to murmur that they are a fragment of a larger memory, a technique inherited from a civilization so ancient it left no name. And in the Pacific, the scattered statues of Easter Island stare with blank eyes toward horizons unknown. The Moai stand half buried, guardians of a people who recall that their ancestors came from lands now drowned. In Polynesian chants, there are faint references to islands swallowed by the sea, homes left behind before the great voyage. Could the Moai be not only guardians, but witnesses, stone echoes of a continent that once flourished and then fell beneath waves? Another trace preserved not in parchment, but in volcanic rock. Beyond artifacts, there are the manuscripts that survive like whispers between worlds. The Codex Chimalpopoca of the Aztecs tells of suns that rose and fell, of ages destroyed by water and fire before our own. The Book of Enoch, long excluded from canon, speaks of watchers who descended, teaching forbidden knowledge before a flood cleansed the earth. In India, the Mahabharata recalls wars fought with weapons that shine like suns and leave cities in ruin, descriptions hauntingly similar to modern vision of devastation. These texts are not whole histories, but traces fragments of older tales carried forward by the guardians of myth. In the Vatican itself, one imagines shelves heavy with documents whose very existence is a trace of another age. Some whisper of the Chronicon of Berossus, a Babylonian priest who wrote of kings who reigned not for years, but for thousands of years before the flood. His works survive only in fragments, quoted by later writers. Did the rest vanish into fire and decay, or were they gathered, quietly, into Rome's secret vaults? If so, their silence is itself a trace, an absence that speaks louder than presence. Even symbols carry these hidden fingerprints. The spiral, carved into rocks from Ireland to New Mexico, has no single owner. It whispers of cycles, of return, of eternity. The serpent, winding across cultures, binds knowledge and danger alike. The sun disk, the cross, the tree of life all appear again and again, shifting form but keeping essence. These symbols are living traces, surviving in art, in architecture, in ritual. They are the fingerprints of a civilization so old it had time to spread its language of signs to every corner of the earth. But not all traces in stone or script. Some are written in the stars. Ancient monuments align with solstices, equinoxes, and constellations with uncanny precision. The pyramids of Giza mirror Orion's belt. Stonehenge frames the midsummer sunrise. Chaco Canyon's great kivas echo the lunar cycle. How could early societies, supposedly young and unformed, chart the heavens with such accuracy? Perhaps they inherited this knowledge, handed down from an earlier people who lived and breathed by the stars. These alignments are not chance, they are traces, etched into the very sky. At times, the traces resurface in the strangest of places. Farmers plowing their fields stumble upon carved stones that do not match local tradition. Divers exploring the seafloor off Yonaguni in Japan find what seems like a stepped pyramid beneath the waves. In Bolivia, at Pumapunku, colossal blocks lie scattered as though toppled by a hand far greater than time. Each discovery leaves scholars puzzled. Each adds to the faint pattern of something that refuses to disappear. Perhaps the most haunting trace of all is the persistence of memory itself. In dreams, in myths, in the collective unconscious, humans recall places they have never seen. Tales of lost paradises, shining cities, and cataclysms haunt every culture. Why do we remember what we have never known? Perhaps memory is older than the body. Perhaps it is carried in the blood, in the very marrow of humankind. In that sense, we are all living traces of civilizations forgotten. Yet for every trace that rises, there are hands eager to cover it once again. Artifacts vanish into private collections. Manuscripts disappear into archives. Discoveries dismissed with silence. It is as though someone, somewhere, wishes the pattern to remain invisible. The Vatican is often accused of playing this role, the great keeper of secrets, the guardian of the traces. If civilizations older than Sumer truly existed, then perhaps Rome does not deny them, but only hides them until the world is ready to see. But readiness never comes. The world continues, content with the illusion of beginnings, the story of Sumer as the dawn. The traces remain, faint but insistent, refusing to vanish entirely. Imagine now standing in a quiet museum, late at night. The lights are dim, the halls empty. You pause before a glass case holding a shard of clay inscribed with symbols no scholar agrees upon. Its edges are jagged, its surface weathered. Yet in that shard is a story, one that outlived empires, floods, fire, and the silence of centuries. That shard is not a relic of one culture alone. It is a fragment of a world we have forgotten, a trace of a civilization erased but not gone. In such traces lies a haunting lesson: nothing is ever truly lost. Even civilizations swallowed by sea and sand leave whispers. Even ages erased leave shadows. The Vatican may hold its secrets, but the earth itself scatters traces freely for those willing to see. And so, the question lingered: how many traces are still waiting beneath deserts, within caverns, at the bottom of oceans, in vaults never opened? Each fragment beckons, not with answers, but with the promise of a larger story. The trace is not the past itself, it is the footprint, the shadow, the whisper left behind. And in following these traces, step by step, We may one day find ourselves standing not before myth, but before memory itself, the memory of civilizations older than Sumer, hidden yet returning, like stars that reappear when the clouds drift away. There is always a moment at the end of every great search when one feels both the weight of discovery and the hollowness of its incompletion. The closer we draw to the hidden heart of history, the more fragile it becomes, as though the truth itself resists being held, like mist rising from a meadow at dawn. The mystery is clearest in its outlines, just before it vanishes into light. For centuries, whispers have claimed that beneath the Vatican, somewhere within its labyrinth of archives and vaults, lies the key, the final breath of knowledge that would reveal a world before Sumer, before Egypt, before all we call civilization. But as generations of scholars, seekers, and dreamers edge closer, the mystery seems to pull away, like a lantern receding into the darkness of a tunnel. One can almost imagine standing before a great sealed door in those subterranean halls. The air is dry, heavy with centuries of silence. The door is marked not with locks alone, but with symbols, faint carvings of spirals, crosses, suns the kind that belong not to any single faith, but to the language of humankind itself. On the other side, perhaps, lies the last intact record of a civilization long buried by water or fire, yet the door remains closed, and the secret breathes only through cracks, never opening fully to the world. The last breath of a mystery is not thunderous. It does not erupt in revelation. It exhales gently, like wind moving through dry grass, like the sigh of an ancient flute carved from bone. Its presence is felt in quiet ways, in coincidences that are not coincidences, in fragments that refuse to vanish, in memories that stir within us without source. Consider the strange persistence of certain stories. Flood myths, for instance, recur across cultures from Mesopotamia to the Americas, from India to the Pacific Islands. Each tells of a deluge, a world cleansed, a beginning that was not the first. Were these myths simply born of local floods, or are they the echo of one great disaster remembered dimly through generations? If so, then each telling is like a breath, a whisper left to remind us that something came for, something we have almost forgotten. Or consider the uncanny reappearance of symbols, the spiral, the serpent, the star of 8 points found carved on stones in Europe, painted on pottery in the Americas, woven into cloth in Africa, drawn in temples of the East. How can the same signs appear in places so distant, in times so far apart? Perhaps the last breath of the forgotten civilization survives not in their monuments, but in these symbols that traveled like seeds on the wind, settling wherever human hands could carve or paint. Even in the silence of the earth, the breath stir in deep caves untouched by light. Archaeologists have found carvings 30,000 years old, figures of animals, dots, and strange shapes whose meaning escapes us. Were these the first attempts at art, or the last surviving traces of an older language, one we no longer hear? The breath of that language lingers, soft as the echo of a flute in stone chambers, waiting for ears to recognize its music. Yet perhaps the most haunting breath of all is not found in stone or parchment, but within us. Have you ever felt a memory that was not yours, a strange familiarity in a place you have never been, a sorrow for a ruin you never saw fall? Some call it deja vu, others call it the collective unconscious. But what if it is neither? What if it is the last breath of civilizations older than Sumer, carried within our very blood, our bones remembering the songs of an age we cannot name? And here, perhaps, lies the Vatican's role to preserve not simply documents or artifacts, but the very breath of these lost civilizations, to keep alive within guarded vaults the faintest exhalations of history before history, scrolls too fragile to unroll, maps too strange to display, books whose languages are no longer read. Their silence is not emptiness, but reverence, as though the keepers know that to reveal them fully would shatter the delicate spell that keeps mystery alive. But mystery, like breath, is fleeting. It cannot be captured or caged. It passes through fingers like wind, leaving only the sensation that it was there, and perhaps that is its purpose, not to be owned, but to be felt. The civilizations before Sumer may never step fully into the light of certainty, yet their presence is undeniable in the shadows, like the outline of a figure seen through smoke. Imagine walking now through a desert at twilight. The horizon glows faintly with the last light of the sun. You stumble upon a half-buried stone carved with markings you do not understand. You brush away the sand, tracing the grooves with your fingertips. The air grows still, and for a moment, you feel as though someone long forgotten is breathing beside you, whispering through time. Then the wind rises, covering the stone again with grains of dust. The trace vanishes. Only the memory remains. This is the last breath of the mystery, always present, always fading, never quite yours to hold. And so, the question is not whether the Vatican hides proof of civilizations older than Sumer. The question is whether we are meant to hold proof at all, or whether the mystery survives only because it stays hidden, breathing faintly through fragments, beckoning us to search, but never to fully find. For if we were to unearth every secret, reveal every hidden chamber, decipher every lost word, would we not lose the wonder, the dream, the trembling sense of standing at the edge of the unknown? Perhaps the mystery itself depends on silence, on the breath that lingers without being spoken. Now the night grows deep, the candles burn low, the breath of the mystery lingers like incense in the air, fragile, vanishing, but unforgettable. And as it fades, it leaves us not with answers, but with the quiet awe of knowing that history is larger than our story, older than our memory, deeper than our understanding. In the end, the last breath of the mystery is not an end at all. It is an invitation to listen more closely, to feel more deeply, to honor the silence that holds the oldest truths. The silence does not close the story, it prepares us for the final whisper. In every story, there comes a final pause, the moment when words grow softer, when the current of thought slows, and all that remains is the hush between one breath and the next. The mystery of civilizations older than Sumer, of secrets perhaps hidden within the Vatican's silent vaults, does not end with revelation, but with this hush, a closing whisper, so faint it might almost be mistaken for silence. Imagine now the halls of the Vatican at night. The last bell of the evening has tolled, and the footsteps of the clergy have faded. Only the guards remain, their shadows long upon marble floors. Deep below, beyond doors that few eyes will ever see, lies the archive, a labyrinth of shelves and sealed chambers, a city of memory beneath the city of faith. Here, the air is cool, still, thick with the weight of centuries. Dust floats in golden moats where lanterns burn, and somewhere in the farthest corner lies a manuscript that has not been touched for generation. Its parchment is brittle, its ink faint, but within it lingers a voice from a time before Sumer. The whisper begins as you imagine opening that forgotten book. The script curls in symbols that do not belong to any known tongue, yet your heart seems to recognize them, as though remembering a song you have never heard. The words are not loud, they are not declarations, and they are fragments, echoes of a people whose names are lost, who left their story as breath upon a mirror, fading as soon as it was written. And yet the echo remains, waiting for ears to listen. Perhaps the whisper does not come from a manuscript at all, but from the earth itself. When wind moves through the stones of Göbekli Tepe, when waves wash over the drowned ruins off the coast of Japan, when the desert night settles over the silent pyramids, there is a murmur in the air, the last breath of civilizations that once stood tall. They do not speak in words, but in presence. They remind us, without declaring, that they were here and that nothing is ever wholly erased. The Vatican, in this vision, becomes less a hoarder of secrets than a keeper of whispers. Within its silence, the traces are preserved, not so they may be shouted into the world, but so they may endure, ready for the moment when humanity learns to listen with humility rather than conquest. For mysteries cannot be forced, they reveal themselves in their own time, like dawn slowly washing over mountains. The closing whisper asks not for belief, but for stillness. It invites us to consider that the beginning of civilization may not be where we thought, that the story of humankind is older, deeper, more cyclical than our chronicles suggest. It asks us to walk gently, to honor ruins and symbols, to listen to myths with the same reverence we grant to stone tablets, for in each of these, the whisper moves fragile, fleeting, but eternal. Picture now a great desert under a ski of stars. The sand is cold beneath your feet. You look to the horizon, and there, half buried, lies a ruin with no name. You kneel, brushing away the grains, uncovering a fragment of carved stone. As you trace its patterns, you feel not knowledge, but memory stir a recognition without source. The wind rises, carrying a sound soft as breath, and you realize it is the voice of that lost world, not loud, not clear, but present. It lingers in your chest long after the wind has passed. And perhaps that is all we are meant to receive, not proof, not certainty, but presence, the whisper that reminds us we are part of a story much older than our calendars, much vaster than our empires, a story that continues, whether we read it or not. In this way, the mystery does not close, it does not vanish, it rests, like a sleeping figure beneath a veil, waiting for the right moment to stir again. The Vatican's silence, the fragments scattered across continents, the myths echoing through generations, these are not endings, but pauses. The whisper assures us that the story remains alive in the hidden places, alive in the quiet moments when we dare to wonder. And so, as the night deepens, the whisper draws near. It is the sound of pages turning in an unseen library. It is the rustle of leaves in a forgotten grove. It is the hush of waves against ruins drowned long ago. It is the sigh in your own breath as you listen, drifting between waking and dreaming. The closing whisper tells you this: history is not a straight line, but a circle. Civilizations rise, they fall, they return in traces, in whispers, in dream. You are not apart from them. You carry their breath within you. The mystery is not outside, locked in vaults or buried in stone. It is already within your memory, waiting to be remembered. And then, silence, the whisper fades, not because it is gone, but because it has returned to the place from which it came, the vast silence of time. You are left with the lingering sense of a presence just beyond reach, of a truth too vast to be spoken, too delicate to be held. As you close your eyes, the story becomes a dream. The ruins, the archives, the fragments dissolve into mist. All that remains is the echo, soft, eternal, endless. The mystery breathes once more, and then it rests. Muz, the night is complete. The candle is extinguished, and in the silence, the closing whisper remains, carrying you gently into sleep.